out for you. Freedom!
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom!
It's the best show in town.
Best show in town. Freedom! Well.
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better. Live better.
Let's take someone with a random account, with a random name that just seems attractive.
Play live online against the world's top chess players while they stream their thoughts live. As a Chess24 Premium member, seize the chance to have your moment of fame. Get a peek inside their lives with question and answer sessions, in-depth teaching, analysis and interviews. The Champions Chess Tour, with countless accompanying events, is happening now. Tune in on Chess24.
Take your chess to the next level with carefully selected collections featuring some of the best video series from Chess24. Buy the courses to own them forever, save up to 60%, or go premium and access all series while having all other privileges of premium membership. Learn more at chess24.com/deals.
Watch chess tournaments online? Don't just watch. Go to Chess24 and make it an interactive learning experience. You get live commentary in multiple languages, including different streams in English from beginner to expert. It's not just commentary, since there's also an interactive live board. Choose your game and try out your own moves. All moves by the players get near-instant cloud analysis from the latest chess engine, which will also analyze any move made by a premium user. Open the tab Opening Tree. It contains a database of 500 million positions from historical games. Has the current position ever occurred before? What did the best players play? The database tab lets you search full games and load them on the interactive board. There are many more tools for chess learners and experts. Come to Chess24 to watch all the online and over-the-board chess tournaments happening worldwide. Discover a new way to watch chess. Be part of the experience.
It's time to take control of your journey towards chess mastery. Magnus Carlsen introduces Chessible, the definitive solution for studying chess. Move Trainer uses the science of spaced repetition to identify your strengths and eliminate your weaknesses. There's no need to set up a board, remember which page you're on, or keep track of all the moves you miss. Move Trainer empowers you to go from the opening to the end game with confidence. It's a seamless, effective, and fun way to study chess. Choose from one of the largest online chess libraries in the world, with hundreds of titles ranging from classic books through to our exclusive Chessible courses, including over 100 free courses. Get expert insights from International Master John Bartholomew, Grandmaster Sam Shankland, International Master Christoph Sulecki, Grandmaster Simon Williams, World Champion Magnus Carlsen, and hundreds of other instructors. Get started now and join our growing community of over 100,000 chess enthusiasts at chessible.com. Chessible, take control of your journey towards chess mastery.
Super discounts on merchandise. Massive sales on courses from Chessible. Chessible and Chess24 bundles, with new deals appearing every day. Visit chess24.com/deals.
So fresh, so new.
Freedom,
It's all for you.
all for you. Freedom,
Keep your ear to the ground.
talking about the freedom.
It's the best show in town.
Let's show you that freedom. Well,
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better, live better. Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better, live better.
It's all for you.
All for you. Freedom.
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom.
It's the best show in town.
Let's show me that freedom. Well,
Today is the deciding set of the semifinals here at the FTX Crypto Cup. Welcome chat, welcome everyone. We started with 16 of the world's top grandmasters down to 4, and at the end of today we will only be left with 2 finalists. What an action-packed drama day we had in set 1 of the semifinals. Lots of onboard and offboard drama. Let's do a quick recap of all the action we witnessed yesterday. Now, let's start with the Wesley So Jan Nepomniachtchi matchup. In that, we saw 3 draws. Jan seemed to be the one who was in the driving seat in game 1 and game 3. He had some chances, and who can forget that moment, which was not just a tiny little chance, that rook a3 check in game 3, which would have won Jan a piece, won the game. A very crucial moment which shocked us all, as Jan, completely in a blind spot, missed it. I remember watching Wesley's reaction on camera when he played the move king c3. I'm sure you all saw it. Wesley knew what he had done. An absolute shock when Jan missed it, replying with rook e7. Going into game 4, Jan did not only have to face Wesley's attack, but also a mosquito attack. As we all saw Jan struggling with the circumstances around him, it looked like he was extremely annoyed. That was a little funny, but only funny for all of us watching. I'm sure playing a game of this high stake with all of that going on, a tough moment for Jan. He was not able to concentrate, not really able to do much, and in a completely equal position, which really we felt he should have wrapped up that endgame super quick. He sort of overpushed, distracted with what was going on around. And with Wesley, we know the one thing about this guy is that you give him a little chance and he is all on you. Wesley won the deciding game, game 4, and with that took set 1. Magnus Carlsen, Carlsen-Radjabov, equally dramatic. Magnus and Timur have played before in the knockout stages of the Champions Chess Tour, and that matchup saw only one decisive game, with Magnus Carlsen winning it and knocking out Raja. Now, yesterday he won game 3 in a very convincing, cruising manner, and that made us feel like it's going to be hard for Raja to bounce back, but Timur had a brilliant opening prep up his sleeve, which he later mentioned he had prepared against another opponent, a very strong opponent, and he got his chance to use it against Magnus. And what a moment to use it, chat, because that worked amazingly well. And when it was required, Timur struck back with that great opening novelty, going h4. In that position, Magnus was not able to handle it with the limited amount of time in his clock. And with that, Timur bounced right back into the match, leveling the score, which means that Jan Nepomniachtchi has to win on demand. And if he does that, then we have a playoff, because the format is that if it's a tie after set 2, then we go into 2 blitz games. And if that's a tie as well, then we've got the Armageddon. Talking about what is coming up today, Wesley in his post game, very funny and cheeky there, mentioning that he just needs 2-2. So we know Wesley, when he needs to draw and keep things under control, how strong he is. And he's hoping he gets a little bit of help with the mosquito situation. Let me bring up chat and let me see what's going on. How is everyone doing? And on a scale of 1 to 10, how excited are you guys for today's matchup? I think it is going to be absolutely brilliant because Jan is super motivated, and we know it's hard to create chances against Wesley, but if there's a player and if there's a style that can do that, it's definitely Jan's style. On the other hand, Magnus still sort of struggling with form, chat, still sort of slightly out of shape. I have to confess that I don't remember seeing Magnus struggle so much in the Champions Chess Tour. I am seeing chat, Harry, you're absolutely right. That's what this pre-show is all about. Talking chess, crypto, action all around us. 10, I love it. That is what we want. 10 out of 10 level of excitement, and 10 out of 10 is the gameplay that we're expecting from the players today, because it really is do or die today. Just 2 will remain. It is the deciding set. All right, what else is going on now? Oh, by the way, some more exciting news, but I'm only going to announce it in about 7 minutes. There is a great contest coming up, so just get super ready for it. I'm not allowed to give it away just yet, chat, but a really fun question and huge prizes with that. So that contest is coming up shortly. I'll be bringing it up, and yeah, I'm thrilled about that one as well. Let's take a look at what IG had to say, what Instagram had to say about the matchup today. Let's bring that up. And here we have it. Day 2. So this is quite fascinating. Wesley still at 56%, Jan at 44%. A little switch up there, but still a very even matchup here. So a lot of you, majority of you, a tiny majority of you believe that Jan is probably not going to be able to bounce back. I think it's too early to call out. I would say it's a 50-50 chance, and that Jan is able to do it. Wesley's just so solid. How do you break those iron defenses? Meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen at still a pretty high 62% as a favorite. And what do you think, chat? What do you think about this? Do you think Jan will be able to bounce back? Yes or no? I want to see yes or no in chat. That do you believe that Jan has it in him to win on demand today? Do you think that's going to happen, or do you think it's going to be a Wesley So show? What's your take, Tanya? Who is going to win between Magnus and Raja? Because it's really hard to say. You know, the thing with Magnus is that our expectations from him are so high that we just expect him to cruise through every event. And I've been saying this, that this is the one event we've really seen the world champion struggle in. Starting from the preliminaries up until now, it's been tough for him, but he's still in the semifinals, and it's a level score from set 1. So hard to say, but I would give that as a 60-40 to Magnus. I would give that as a 60-40 to Magnus, just because I've seen this happen time and time again. Whenever there's a clutch moment, whenever the world champion really needs to do it, he just shows up at the party. He just shows up at the party, and how. Ravi Teja, Magnus will win the cup. Of course, it's interesting how, despite being out of form, Magnus still remains a favorite for everyone. That's quite interesting. That just goes on to show. I think it's amazing to have a world champion who is dominating in all formats of the game. In the classical format, rapid, he beat Hikaru, who is the world #1 blitz player. I think that's quite a special situation we got going, chat. What do you think about the Jan So matchup? Do you think Jan is going to bounce back? Do you think we will see a playoff today? Do you think we're going to have a playoff today? I would never, Bobby saying, I would never have Magnus less than 70% favorite in any game. I'm going to put him at 60-40 today. Also because Raja is so solid, super solid, not making any mistakes. He's clearly taking this match very seriously, considering he came out with that big novelty yesterday and big prep yesterday in a game that mattered so much. So for him, I think he's in top form here. I would put that as 60-40. All right, who else? What else is going on? Amit, of course, Leko, Peter will be joining us shortly for all the chess action. Right now, it is all about chatting with chat, about chess and all the action. And let's talk a little crypto. All right, this is my favorite part of the day. Let me see what is happening in the crypto world. What is going on there? So, it's quite interesting because take a look at the prizes that we have for this tournament. $220,000 in cash prizes and 100K in Bitcoin. Now, when the tournament was announced, 100K in Bitcoin translated to 2.1825 Bitcoins. And that will be the amount of Bitcoin which will be converted into whatever is the value at the end of the event. And it's funny, I asked you yesterday, what do you think will be the value of Bitcoin at the end of the event? And a lot of you had some interesting takes. But I wonder what it will be at the end of the year as well. I have a feeling that it's going to pick up. We've seen such a volatile market. And let me check what's going on. Let me check what is going on in the crypto space, chat. Wow, that's a lot of red. That is a lot of red. Chat, if you could invest in Bitcoin, what would you invest in? What is your prefer out of Bitcoin and Ethereum? If you could invest in crypto, which of these two would you invest in, Bitcoin or Ethereum? I really want your view on this. Let's see what you say. Let's see. Don't check, Kishan. Yeah, that just happened. That was a little depressing, but that's fine. A lot of red, a lot of red. Did you invest in crypto? I have gotten into the crypto space of late, and I think it's amazing that chess and crypto find each other in this time, because it just makes so much sense. And Chess24 is super proud to team up with FTX for this tournament and have them as a partner. I think crypto space, chess world has so much in common. And it's amazing to see them come together. So which one out of Bitcoin and Ethereum? What are you guys saying? What are you guys saying? Dogecoin to the moon. Tanya coin. Oh, I wish that was actually a coin and I would get a lot of them for free. I don't know how to invest in crypto. Well, just get into the space and read up on it. It's actually quite interesting, the technology behind it. Definitely a big future. And of course, it is a lot to do with timing and getting a little lucky, but have a look at it. Since I've been into it, I'm really enjoying it. Invest in your knowledge. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's really nice to not just go and follow a trend of putting money in any kind of investment, but actually reading up on stuff and making your own choices based on how you think about stuff. A Bitcoin. It's crazy, John's Chess channel. What is going on? I mean, that Bitcoin, it's funny. I was thinking, imagine a scenario, chat, where if there was actually an option for cryptocurrency to go into a negative space. And what would that mean? What if at the end of the tournament, Bitcoin, I know it's not possible, but just this hypothetical universe where Bitcoin would actually go negative, would that mean that the players would have to pay FTX for this? That would be insane, because the chart is sort of like this right now. Not looking good. But who knows? Ethereum. I also find it really something very interesting to read more about these different cryptocurrencies and what they bring to the blockchain technology world. So definitely, I think these two are the big coins of the moment. All right, it's time. It's time, chat. It's time for the quiz that I've been talking about, and you are going to love this one. So get ready for it. Let me open chat so that I can see what you guys say. And the question, this is the opera raffle. The question is, the question of the day, listen carefully. Let me have it in front of me so that I don't mess this up. All right, so the question is, which player would you take with you to the moon? That is the question of the day. Which player would you, chat, take to the moon? And this is what you have to do. You have to go on Twitter. You have to use the hashtag ChessChamps, hashtag FTX Crypto Cup. Post your answers there and take a look at the massive prize. A lucky winner gets the Chessible, the most hyped up course, and something that the world champion himself has played and won games in. And what bigger validation do you need? Adiban currently dancing and jumping in joy. The lifetime repertoire 1B3 course up for grabs here, up to win, and a 1-year Play Magnus membership that gets you access to the Magnus trainer, the Play Magnus app with all its features, and of course, Tactics Frenzy. And then you also win on top of that a 1-year Chess24 premium membership? Let me just repeat that question. And the question is that which chess player would you want to take to the moon with you? I'm thinking what would be my answer to that. And I'm struggling to think of the answer, because it's like, yeah, you take the chess player to the moon and then do you just leave them there and then come back? Or do you take them to the moon and then you have to spend your whole life with them there? So lots of things to think about there. But maybe I would take Judith Polgar, chat. Maybe I would take Judith Polgar. That would be super fun. I think it would be amazing to analyze her games, and it would keep it very entertaining, and I would learn so much. And I'm just such a diehard fan. I think I would do that. Sunshine Power, Hikaru, anyone? Well, who knows? Maybe, of course. And he's got such a huge fan following. Definitely. What else, Chad? Who do you think? Who do you think you would take to the moon? I know, right? Hero Troy, that Judith Polgar. I think she's the first person who came to my mind as well. The hashtag Mercado that you have to use is hashtag FTX Crypto Cup, hashtag Chess Champs, and post your answers. The quiz goes live at, I think it's already gone live. So go on Twitter and check it out. And it's so much up for grabs, these great prizes. I'm super excited. Keen saying Tanya wants to take Peter Leko. Oh my God. I'm sure that if I had the opportunity, when I would return from the moon, I would make that final Grandmaster norm. I'm sure about it. So why not? What some amazing options there with chat mentioning who they would want to take to the moon. So anyway, so go on Twitter and do that. Meanwhile, also tell us which currency would you rather invest in. So a lot of you mentioning Doge, a lot of you mentioning Bitcoin and Ethereum. And I was wondering if you actually win 100K in crypto, what would you invest? What would you do with that kind of money? I think if it was me, I would probably think about maybe just investing it back in crypto, because why not? Chat? All right, we still have about 7 minutes to lift off. Let's quickly remind ourselves of the format. Of course, the players fight 4 games today, rapid games, 15 minutes with a 10-second increment as always. And if it's a tie after set 2, then we move on to the Blitz playoff. Lots of different investment options you guys are putting it. Obviously, I'm not an investment expert. I'm not good at giving financial advice or anything. But yeah, definitely, I think it's a really interesting space to look at with the cryptocurrency and how it's breaking all norms and the conventional ways in which we see currency and digital currency and money and technology and stuff like that. And I also see that we are being joined by the legend, by the man himself, who, of course, while we discuss all about crypto and discuss predictions and chat about who's going to win, he's the man who actually explains all the moves to us. So let's bring him on. Peter, welcome. And who would you take to the moon with you?
Hello, Tanya. Hello, everyone. Well, that's a shocking question right from the start. I mean, I'm really focusing on these matches, yeah, because I have so many things, that I'm considering. Okay, if I have to take someone, I will take my wife. That's for sure. I mean, that's number one, and then we're gonna see next.
The question is a chess player. Peter, the question is a chess player. A
chess player, and still alive or from the past, or what exactly?
Whoever you want to pick.
Oh my God. Okay. I mean, come back to this question tomorrow. Yeah. Then I'm gonna.
Peter needs time to think.
Yeah, because okay. I mean, I have so many great people in mind, but yeah, it's very difficult to choose.
Very difficult. Well, the chat, Peter, has got this amazing opportunity to enter this quiz, to give us their crazy answers and win some brilliant prizes. So chat, time is running out. Go to Twitter and enter the contest. You know what to do. Tell us which player you would take to the moon. Do not forget to use the hashtag FTX Crypto Cup, hashtag Chess Champs with your answer. Peter, lots of people sending you greetings from the chat, and they, of course, completely love and enjoy your commentary. Would you like to say hi to them?
Yeah, definitely. Thank you very much, everyone. Thank you very much following the action. It's also for me a privilege and a big honor to be here with this fantastic tournament and with this whole Meltwater Champions Chess Tour. It's super exciting. We are with Tanya here right from the beginning. And I feel like, you know, when you are there from the beginning, you feel all the action. You see also the whole development, this whole Champion Chess Tour from last year. I mean, how it's developing, and it's just fantastic to be part of it. And I can speak in our name with Tanya that we are very, very happy that you guys out there are enjoying so much our commentary.
Couldn't agree more with that. Now today, Peter, it is such a crucial day, especially for, I think, Jan. He needs to come out with everything that he's got in today's match because he is trailing Wesley. Now, despite what happened yesterday, when we speak about the quality of the games or when we speak about which player had more chances, I think it was Jan. Despite Wesley taking the match, it always felt like Jan was the one who was closer to it. He was the one with the better positions. What needs to change today so that he's actually able to convert that into the points he needs?
Yeah, well, I think exactly that's the reason why it hurts so much. Yeah, because when you feel like your opponent outplayed you or outclassed you and he took the set, it's kind of okay, he was better. But when you feel like, you know, you were the one who had the chances and who could have easily actually win that set, that's very, very irritating. I think also frustrating. On the other hand, might give also extra motivation and extra energy for Jan to try to come back. We have seen that whenever Wesley took the lead, he was kind of unstoppable. Yeah, so it's going to be very, very tough for Jan. He will have the white pieces in the first game. I think this is very, very important. We have been talking about this many, many times. I think that when you are trailing, then it's very important to start the first game with the white pieces because you are coming in an aggressive mood, and then you can put all your aggression and your anger into this white game. While if you are playing from the black side the first game and you are on the so-called side that you need to bounce back, you might need to take this first game very carefully. Yeah, so in this regard, I think it's a good setup that Jan starts with the white pieces. But how to crack down Wesley's defenses, that's of course a very, very big question.
That question is as unanswerable as the question on what is Bitcoin's future. Absolutely impossible to say. Where do you find the chinks in Wesley's armor? Now, the other matchup, Magnus Carlsen versus Teemu Radjabov. Peter, the two decisive games that we had yesterday, it just felt like the results were sort of decided right after the opening. The one that Magnus won out of the opening, Raja didn't get a chance. Raja coming out with that brilliant prep in game 4, not giving Magnus a chance. I don't know what is going on there, but it just feels like in this particular event, Magnus is really struggling with the opening phase.
Yeah, definitely. In this regard, I think that for Magnus, now the second day should be much better because I'm not exactly sure that he expected Radjabov to be so brilliantly prepared. It was not just that Teemu was very well prepared with the black pieces, but he also had very, very targeted, interesting ideas with the white pieces, putting Magnus immediately under pressure. So Magnus never really got the type of positions where he could just, you know, relax and play chess. He was always under pressure. And definitely this fourth game loss was a total disaster for Magnus. At the same time, it's a perfect wake-up call. And if Magnus looks at the games yesterday, the whole dynamic of the match yesterday, then I think the 2-2 result is absolutely fine for him. Of course, since he was leading, he might be disappointed that he didn't took the set, because then, of course, today he would be in a very comfortable situation. And there we go. We already have liftoff. And Jan Nepomniachtchi opting for C4. Okay, so we get an answer that not E4, not D4. Jan feels that he needs some extra measures to try to disbalance Wesley.
Well, we've seen Jan play C4 in the candidates, that one-sided match that he had against Alexienko, where Alexienko got into so much trouble right out of the opening. We've also seen Jan play C4 in the FTX Cup. So I'm pretty sure Wesley is not completely surprised. He takes a little bit of time to adapt to the situation, goes with knight f6. What are we expecting? Is Wesley going to go with some ideas of QGD with e6, or will he try to play the fianchetto chatter positions and trying to get... I don't believe Wesley is going to go g6 here.
No, definitely not. I believe, you know, it would be very logical for Wesley to play e5. Because,
e5, yeah.
Because if you look at the games, and e5 on the board, I wanted to highlight that after c4, e5, Jan has played the move g3. So once white uses the move order c4 and g3 together against e5, it's very, very tempting from the black side, you know, to play this move order c4, knight f6. This case, if white plays g3, you can switch back to e6 and you're going to play this e6 d5 setup. And once white commits the knight to c3, then you go e5 and you avoided this second move g3, which usually I think Jan likes to play. So the big question is, what did Jan think about this? Knight f3, knight c6 on the board, e3, bishop b4, and here knight d5. Okay, this is somewhat of a surprise because I think that usually white plays queen c2. The queen c2 is clearly the main move, and then black was capturing on c3, queen takes c3, queen e7, followed by d5. This is like a thematic way how we have seen many games. But and look at this, knight d5, e4, knight g1. So this is a complete provocation by Jan. Very
Complete provocation, and 100% something that he has prepared and has all the ideas in. But a move like knight g1, you do feel black should be fine here. If white goes knight f3, allows e4, comes back with the knight, it's hard to believe that Wesley will fall into any major trouble after this kind of an opening play. And now he redirects the knight from h3, heading to f4. Yeah, heading to f4. I mean, it's a very interesting approach. Basically, it definitely shows that, yeah, Jan understood that, okay, Wesley in the principal lines is just brilliantly prepared. So no reason to try to test him there, because the answer will be, that Wesley will know his stuff. And then it's probably like Jan and his team was trying to create some kind of a scenario where maybe it's a bluff, maybe it's nothing, but maybe there is some real idea behind, and the opponent doesn't exactly know it, that is it something really serious or is it just for the rapid game. If we look at this, in this regard, yesterday, the line that we are now praising Radjabov of playing some brilliant preparation, actually the preparation itself, when you take a look, you realize that you cannot repeat that from white side anymore, because if you check with computer, black has 0 problems. But for that one game, it came as a surprise and it worked perfectly. So this is rapid chess. And now actually we also have the chance to jump to the Magnus's game to see how did Magnus now approach this. And wow, d4, d5, c4, e6, knight c3, and now not a6 as yesterday, but suddenly h6. This line Magnus is sometimes playing, but you know, you always have the feeling that if he has played it once, he's not going to repeat it anymore, but he keeps on coming back to this line. We saw him play the Queen's Gambit decline, but going for this a6 setup after taking the e6, d5 pawns there. But I think these ideas with a6, h6 are so interesting, and they leave so much scope for a game, because very often these moves come handy at some point in the middle game. They're super non-committal, not disclosing the direction you want to take the middle game into. And I think that's what Magnus enjoys moves like a6 and h6 in the QGD, because they just leave a lot of space for any kind of a middle game to develop. You're just not disclosing your cards early on. Yeah, basically the idea, I think, if we already can speak about this knight c3, h6, that he wants to make sure that white will not be able to develop bishop to g5 once the knight gets to f6. And he wants to basically make sure that after knight f3, knight f6, since he did not commit his bishop yet to bishop e7, that's why after the move bishop f4, black will immediately target this bishop with bishop d6. That's the main idea of h6. If you would not play the move bishop d6, then h6 would be a terrible move. It's all connected with the move bishop d6, which Magnus, of course, immediately played. Bishop g3 castles e3, c5 breaking the center. But the big question is that what will this be? I mean, black will end up in some kind of an isolated pawn position, cd5, bishop g3, h g3, c takes d4. So white, of course, takes with the queen, e takes d5, and white goes bishop b5. Okay, again, we are seeing this type of positions. You know, if Magnus would be from the white side, we would be saying that, Magnus is very, very happy what he got out of the opening. He can massage his opponent. There is no risk for white. And the only question is, how much is white better? But now suddenly that Magnus is on the black side, we are talking about, okay, so Magnus is trying to be creative and so on. So I like this move bishop b5 a lot. Very nice, because it indicates that after knight c6, which would win a tempo,
Timur just wants to take on c6. Yeah, knight c6, bishop takes c6, b takes c6, followed by castles, and then probably try to go knight a4, block these pawns, and claim very, very nice position.
And this particular position that you have on the board after knight c6 looks super pleasant for white. You will create a blockade on the dark squares, and the knight will basically dominate black's bishop in this. c6 would be a weakness for a lifetime. And once again, a Magnus slightly slower than Raja in this opening. He goes with h6, but this move bishop b5 asks him the question whether he wants to accept this position, where he solves the problem of the d5 pawn being an isolated pawn, but in return creates these weaknesses on the dark square. And he goes knight c6, Raja taking his time, but then eventually, of course, bishop b5, as you pointed out, and Peter, you called out this plan. He goes short castle, he'll put a rook on c1, he'll get that knight on c5. Black has to make sure that whenever that knight from c3 jumps to a4, black can also go knight e4, trying to keep as much control as he can. He needs to decide whether he wants to bring his bishop to a6 or to f5. He can also make the move rook b8, because the one good thing after taking that pawn on c6 is that the b file has opened up. So moves like rook b8 and queen b6 as well come to mind here.
Yeah, the point is that usually, I mean, we exactly understand. Yeah, rook e8 is a very nice move first, in order that after knight a4, black will always have this rook e4 move. So this will pose some problems. Then white will have to eventually come back with the queen to d1, not to lose a piece. So white is in no hurry. He just makes the useful moves. After all, the point is that without the dark square bishops and with this construction, I don't see any kind of kingside attack from black side. Yeah. And then the big question is, what kind of compensation does black have for the strategical weaknesses? Yeah, because his pawn structure is damaged, and there are not so many dynamics. I don't know. I somehow, have the feeling, seeing this opening, that the fourth game of yesterday had an impact on Magnus, basically thinking that, oh no, what happened to me that I lost right out of the opening? I don't want to be confronted with some forced lines or eventually some computer preparation. I would like to play chess, but the position that he got here gives Timur, I mean, I think it plays very much into the hands of Timur, because he is very, very good strategic player, very nice having this position under control and out of strengths. You can try to build the pressure and you are not risking anything. So at the moment, I'm very, very interested if Magnus will be able to save this game.
Wow, so you think Magnus is feeling the pressure already? Because the clock situation does seem to indicate that. He's about 4 minutes, a little less than 4 minutes less than Raja right out of the opening. Once more, Magnus feeling the slight nagging pressure that white has created. The thing that one feels here is that white's moves are just so much simpler to make. You have this plan of posting a piece on c5. You have this plan of doubling up the rooks on c6 as well. You can make the move b3. You can also directly jump with the knight to a4, rook e4, queen d1, because the question for black is also, does he really want his rook on e4 in all those positions? Very often, black wants the knight to jump on e4. So getting rook e4, yes, very attractive. But at the end of it, that rook on e4 comes in the way of his own knight as well. So rook c1 played. I'm expecting Magnus to continue development. I'm expecting him to take out that bishop either to f5 or to g4. I like bishop g4 as well. It hits the knight on f3. And if white goes knight e5, attacking that bishop and pawn, he needs to be careful, because then suddenly black will have c5. And we notice that the queen on d4 is in trouble. Queen f4 can be met by g5, and then suddenly white loses a piece. So white can't get attracted to a move like knight e5 here.
Yes, exactly. I mean, this is I think bishop g4 was kind of the only move, practically speaking, from a human point of view, because simply disbalancing, and Timur immediately going knight d2, he controls the e4 square. He also doesn't want to let black capture on f3, because this bishop takes f3, g3, eventually followed by some queen d7 and a6, h5 ideas. Maybe black can try to get some counterplay against white's king. So it makes no sense. Knight d2, very, very nice stabilizing move. Now he wants to opt probably for knight a4 next. Knight is covering the e4 square, but yeah, bishop g4 definitely had to be played. The big question is, what is the follow-up? And
All
okay,
right,
the
so
game has slowed down a bit. Maybe this is the moment to jump back to the Janja Pomjaci Wesley So game, because there I see lot of dynamics in the position. I mean, take a look and let's go back. Let's try to understand what really happened here. So knight g1 castles, knight h3, rook e8. Finally, we saw that Wesley actually, at least he kind of started blitzing out his moves, like b6 was almost blitzed out, indicating like he isn't surprised of this plan. So we don't know exactly. It doesn't look natural what he's doing. I mean, giving up the bishop immediately, white wants to get his dark square bishop to the diagonal, but he goes d5. So that's the justification. He wants to immediately counter in the center, takes, and bishop a6. Yeah, this is the key idea from Wesley. He wants to make sure to change the bishops and not to let white enjoy the two bishops. So bishop takes a6, knight takes a6. Yeah, black did manage to exchange this. If black is in time to bring all his pieces into the game, and then the knight jumps back, it will be perfectly fine for black. But this takes some time, and Jan tries to use the momentum by castle, queen e7, f3. And the move rook a d8 played as well. F takes e4, knight takes e4, that's the current position, and a very interesting one.
Very interesting one, because the rook on d8 is so ideally placed. It was putting pressure on the d2 pawn. White had to make a decision on how to defend it. White doesn't want to play the move d4 in these kind of structures, because that would forever block not just the bishop on b2, but also give black the e4 outpost forever. So d4 structurally is a horrible move. White goes for d3, but this means that d3 pawn is still weak, and white isn't really threatening to put pressure on the e4 knight. Now, the one thing that I notice is that if black goes knight b4, trying to build pressure on that d3 pawn, white can step away from that pin with a move like queen g4, counter-attacking, threatening the g7 pawn, threatening checkmate with queen g7, so it doesn't give you time to pick up the d3 pawn. Of course, he can also play a simple move like queen e2, knight f6, bishop f6, queen f6, knight h5. I don't know where these lines lead to, because the b4 knight is hanging, queen is hanging, g7 pawn is hanging. Peter, too many pieces on pre in this line.
Exactly, but at the end of the day, black actually has the move queen g6, which maybe is a very, very important move, making sure that you cover the mate and the knight is attacked as well. Yeah, it's clear that if white is not winning material, then he will end up with all these weaknesses. So
maybe knight d5, maybe knight d5, and was that a move after queen f6?
Yeah, definitely white needs a different move.
What about knight d5 here?
Yeah, knight d5. Yeah, this is the move, because knight's a double attack. And yes, black can eventually sacrifice the queen with knight takes d5, but this is just some kind of compensation, definitely not enough, because white is in time to protect both pawns. And then black will, black would push c5, and it's not easy, but okay, this is already something white is very happy about.
I mean, if anyone's winning that game, it's got to be white. But
yeah,
knight b4 played. Knight b4 played, Peter, by Wesley. Now, the one thing that I feel about this position is, for example, if white plays a little too safe or a little too cagey with a move like queen e2, just sidestepping from the pin, keeping d3 under control, black can actually keep putting pressure on the d3 pawn with knight c5 now. Knight c5 would not only hit the d3 pawn, but would also hit the e3 pawn. And this, I'm not sure if this is something that white wants to get into. He goes rook f3.
Wow, rook f3. Okay, this is surprising. I mean, okay, it protects the e3 pawn, but I don't know, and probably it hints Jan tries to get rook h3, but I just don't believe in this rook h3 business, because black will get knight to g5, and that will protect always the h7 pawn. So black can have to rely on h6 or even f6 defense, closing down the bishop. I'm not exactly understanding what this rook f3 supposed to mean.
Very interesting. So not moving the queen away from that pin. After rook f3, he's definitely looking at a rook lift attack from either g3 or h3. Now, knight c5 putting more pressure on d3 makes less sense, because white will have this move rook g3 that you're pointing out.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. Actually, just one more thing that I would like to mention, that if white would have played the move queen g4 that we were discussing, then black also has the move queen g5. Maybe it's the move that really bothered Jan because it puts pressure. It just protects the G7 pawn, and then the D3 pawn is hanging and so on. So Wesley, after Rook F3, played the F6 move. He tries to close down the bishop. Kind of a natural move.
And a move that at some point you definitely want to make, because it's really the only way that you can block this monstrous bishop on b2. You want to play f6 to keep that g7 pawn under control and make sure no disasters happen there. But now White still has to solve his problems. The ball is back in Jan's court because with Rook F3, the queen doesn't have so many squares that it can move to. Maybe it's time for him to sidestep with Queen E2.
Exactly. Now Queen E2 is very, very nice because actually the move Rook F3 very nicely protected the pawn. Yeah, Wesley goes Knight G5 and now Rook G3. And White did not have to commit the Rook to H3, which would run into Knight G5 tempo. Now okay, it's not clear. I believe that White can next move go Rook F1 and forget about the A2 pawn. So A2 pawn is not important at the moment. It's very important to get Rook F1 and then eventually H4 and then maybe some Knight H5 hitting those pawns. Yeah, and Black has to be super careful. I mean, if the White gets H4, Knight H5 in, then this problem on the G7 pawn can be very, very serious. The big question is, does Black have something immediate in the center, or should he just try to play some stabilizing moves like King H8 or Queen F7, just trying to take care of the king side? Knight E6, okay, also perfectly making sense because it challenges the knight on F4, and if the knight goes to H5, then probably Wesley calculates that he can just sidestep with his king. Probably he can just sidestep because this Rook takes G7, Knight takes G7, Bishop takes F6 idea looks very dangerous, but in fact Queen takes E3 check solves all the problems for Black, and in fact probably Black is winning. So that's the justification that Black can simply go King H8.
And he does. So Knight H5, there was pressure on that F6 pawn, and Black moves away from the pin along the G file. And with King H8, now that the knight has moved away from H5, once again, the D3 pawn attacked. And let's not forget, White never wants to make the move D4. At this moment, it's anyway impossible to go D4 because I think Knight D4 is something that you have to consider. Maybe it doesn't work immediately because of the G7 pawn, but D4 blocking that bishop is not desirable. Rook F1 that you're mentioning, Peter, doesn't that allow knight takes D3, hitting that bishop on B2?
Yeah, that's the big question. But I mean, I already feel like there should be some sacrifices coming. Yeah, Rook F1 on the board. Jan also opts for it. I mean, if you have to take knight takes D3, then we have to calculate now all this craziness that I can hit with knight takes G7. I mean, looks very promising, the move knight takes G7 here.
All right, let's take a look because these lines need to be definitely calculated. Rook F1, Knight D3 if Black gets greedy. You pick up Knight G7. Too scared to pick up that knight on G7 because now after Bishop F6, it looks like it's game over. So Knight G7 is definitely not an option. This would be a devastating double attack. After Knight G7, does Black have time to step away? Rook F8, you have to move if you have to move the rook because the F6 pawn is hanging.
Yeah, but then everything collapses, yeah, because I mean, we made a fantastic trade for White. I hit the G7 pawn and I gave you the D3 pawn. I can also just come back with the knight to F5 after remove my bishop. It will be wonderful. Wesley says, no, I want to protect. Of course, yeah, Black has to keep his pawn chain and make sure that none of these sacrifices are working, and still insisting that actually, I mean, the D3 pawn is still needs some attention.
And it needs big attention because it's really not clear how White is going to take care of it. He has to be careful. He can't make the move E4, trying to defend the D3 pawn, because then that gives White the opportunity to go Queen C5 check and also trade queens on maybe C2 at some point. Luckily for White, the knight on H5 doesn't hang, but D4 just feels like it's too weakening all these dark squares in White's camp.
Yeah, this is what you had in mind, yeah?
I was thinking it could be a resource to try to at least make sure you don't get checkmated on the king side.
Yeah, it's interesting. I don't know. Can I try to speculate here with Queen G4? But I don't
believe it. I don't believe,
but okay, maybe I already have to. I mean,
all right, let's take a look. So after queen g4, some interesting options because black also can take knight d3 and queen b2. Both moves are possible. Knight d3, you can't take knight g7 because of knight f2 check.
yes, and then I'm getting checkmated on the back rank.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and then this knight f2. Yeah, I've somehow felt that it should not work, but okay, we kind of had to discuss it. But otherwise, I mean, okay, I certainly don't want to play e4. That's not the move I want. But how do I take care of the d3 pawn, and how do I create otherwise some extra pressure? Because I also know Jan, yeah, he doesn't want to protect. He wants to now go all in, and he's trying to hunt down black's king. But how do you do that? Is there some idea?
And that temptation often for Jan is way too strong. Even if there is some way to play slowly, to keep things under control, that temptation to go for your opponent's king and hunt him down to death, often I think for a player like Jan, it's too hard to resist. So queen g4 is definitely a move that he's calculating. Now, Peter, before we've really broken down all the ideas that exist and the various moves in this position. But before we jump to the Magnus one for an update, just to wrap up, what is your evaluation here? If you had to pick a color, would you rather be white or black in this position?
Well, I feel actually that if I would see a clear idea from the white side in this position, then I would say like, yes, I'm loving white's position. But if white fails to come up with a direct idea here, then the long terms, of course, black is perfectly fine. So we also see that Jan usually very much enjoying playing quickly, is taking now his time. You understand that this is a very, very critical moment, because if he is not using the momentum, if the momentum shifts toward the black side, then actually in long terms, white can be really in trouble. We see that the engine bar says like white could be better somehow. It indicates that there should be some idea. I don't know yet. I'm not seeing it. At least I'm not spotting this wonderful idea yet, because this knight takes d3 really irritates me, and this e4 move on general glance also, because I'm giving the d4 square, and also after e4 I'm not setting anything yet. We already discussed that even this queen c5, queen c2 is there, but even if not for the move queen c5, I'm still a little bit skeptical about this e4 move.
So really a big question for Jan, because it's a super critical moment. This, I think, is one of those defining moments that end up setting the tone for the rest of the game and deciding who is better, who is going to be the one who's going to be pushing for the point. So a really, really big moment for Jan to come up with something good right here, right now. Peter, let's jump and get into the other game. Because of the excitement in this one, we haven't had a look at it for a while. Do you want to back up to where we left it last? Because major structural changes. So how did we get here? Break it down to us.
Exactly. I mean, first of all, I would start with this position for just 2 sentences. I think Magnus is out of trouble. And this was a very, very nice sequence of moves, what happened here. And I'm very, very interested to find out what happened and how did Magnus basically neutralize white's pressure completely. It already comes with this, that after bishop g4, the move knight d2 gave Magnus the chance to go queen b6 immediately. This is already good news, because the white knight is not controlling the d4 square. Magnus using the momentum. After knight b3, yes, now the knight is heading to b3, but it's a different position, because white was not able to get the blockade with knight a4. If one more move knight a4, and black will be in a lot of trouble. But of course, Magnus immediately using the momentum with c5. Knight has to move. Already rook a b8, and we feel all these dynamics. There is a lot of dynamics already. Radjabov goes for knight takes c5, rook takes b2, f3, bishop f5, g4. Yeah, those are kind of standard moves. Bishop g6, rook fe1, defending the weakness on e3. But now with all the active pieces and with this very powerful rook on b2, I feel that that black has nothing to worry about. I mean, this is very, very equalish. There is only one thing that he needs. I know even this he does not need to pay attention, because I was thinking like knight 5 a4 with the idea that if you go rook b4, maybe I can have some trick with knight takes d5 and then making an intermediate check. But end of the day, my knight will be hanging. So all these boom, boom, booms don't work out for white. Yeah, just takes, knight takes f6, gf6, rook takes c1. White has won a pawn, but black wins the piece. So thanks to this, then I don't know how white is supposed to be fighting for any advantage at all. So Magnus perfectly safe, but knowing that in this position nothing really critical happens, I think we should now jump back to the Jan's game, because Jan has opted for this d3 d4 that we have been so critical about, that we don't like the move d4, but a lot of things has changed since then, because the knight from e4 went back all the way to e6, so it's not so easy to set up a blockade already. And if black is not able to set up this blockade, for example, knight g5, h4, knight e4 is not possible due to the hanging g7 pawn. And if black is not able to go for it, then d4 makes a lot of sense.
D4 played here, and also let's point out, Peter, that black doesn't have time to actually pick up that d4 pawn. Knight d4, bishop d4, rook d4, and we see the g7 pawn is loose, so you can't afford to trade that d4 pawn for the g7 pawn. This the king would absolutely be blown apart there. And Wesley also just continues the momentum in his own position, breaks immediately with c5. How do you feel about this decision? Because the one thing we hated about d4 was that it blocks white's bishop on b2, and it's just going to be so hard for white to actually make anything of that attack. With c5 now invites white to actually open that bishop up one more time. First feelings about this move c5? I'm not a fan. What about you, Peter?
I think it's perfectly justified. It's a very logical move. The point is that for some reason, yeah, it was not crossing my mind, at least, that d4 is a move. Yeah, we were talking that, yeah, we don't want to play d4, but this is the whole point. And even Jan was taking a lot of time, because maybe it did not cross his mind as well for quite some time, that now actually the circumstances have changed and he can play d4. And if black is not breaking with c5, then white actually might be threatening to kick the knight away with a3 and then expand with, you know, you cannot fall back to d5, because then white goes e4 and breaks through in the center. And if black goes back with knight c6, then he will have terrible knights, and also he will have trouble. In this regard, what Wesley has done makes a lot of sense. He wants to make sure that he kind of, but okay, so after a3, knight d5, it means that after e4, he's ready to play
G5
what?
maybe?
Knight g5, yeah?
Maybe because your queen on e2 is still pinned.
Yeah, because what I wanted to point out, that, yeah, knight d4, bishop d4, cd4 still looks very, very dangerous after rook g7.
Yeah, giving that g7 pawn under any circumstances, I think, is a no-no.
Exactly, yeah. Jan going e4, and then everything depends on knight g5 or knight takes d4. It's really a lot at stake here.
Knight d4 looks a little scary because you end up losing that g7 pawn, and if you have to move that knight d5 to c7, then definitely things have gone wrong. White can continue with d5. I don't see another move except knight g5 here, putting pressure on that e4 pawn, taking advantage of the pin. Is there a problem with knight g5 that you spot immediately?
Yeah, a good question. After knight g5, how do I mean, we see the engine bar. Yeah, engine bar is believing in white that, yeah, there could be some very, very nice momentum, but still not that simple to spot. I mean, one of the questions is that, can I take, for example, rook g5, using the fact that after fg5, rook takes f8, you cannot take back with the queen, but you can take back with the rook. And after d takes c5, I believe you will have the move knight f6. So this doesn't look like the right way. By the way, also, you can take queen takes c5 and you even have knight f4. So this is, of course, absolutely not possible. But if this is not possible, then why isn't knight g5 a move?
Or maybe it is a move. Maybe it is a move, something that black actually needs to go for here. Now, e5 also doesn't make sense, because I think black can and he goes for your line. He goes for knight d4, Peter, which I thought was impossible, because now after this trade, white simply picks up the g7 pawn. Yeah,
but then you go queen. I mean, you move the queen somewhere. It wasn't exactly clear. I mean, what kind of mating threats do I have? It's not obvious. But yeah, the big question is, where do you move your queen? Queen e5 runs into some rook f5 tempo. I don't really believe that black wants to give that tempo, but queen e6 doesn't look natural. Queen e8 also doesn't look natural. And some queen c5 trick doesn't seem to work. So black will have to, and black cannot play rook f7 as well. So he will have to play some move that he doesn't want, just because it's kind of necessary.
All right, so rook f7 doesn't work because white captures on f7 and then you lose your pin. So black ends up losing a piece. So rook f7, queen f7, ed5 would be disaster.
Yeah, but actually, then it brings us that can I play knight c3? Is that a move?
Queen g4, what do you want to do? Queen e4, can you
Well,
actually
then,
take it? Because
yeah, then I'm hoping that I'm not getting checkmated. Rook g8, rook h7, both I'm having
Luckily,
under
Peter.
control.
Luckily, rook h7, you have queen h7.
Exactly.
Very nice. So
Protecting.
queen g4, queen e4. Is there another tactic in this position? Because it looks like it's so close.
Yeah, looks super close. Yeah, super close.
Oh,
but I mean,
one second. Is knight f6 an option here? No, then knight f6 doesn't work because you just grab on f6. You can't take queen g4 because of rook h7. But you
yeah, I
grab
take
on
rook
f6.
f6, and okay, maybe you can take rook f6, but I mean, it's already too much. I believe I have knight e2 checks. I have queen e1 check and then knight e2. Yeah, it just, I mean, it feels that this is wrong for
Yes,
white. So
absolutely.
I think that the whole question is all about this knight c3, because if knight c3 works, then it's a whole different story. Wesley,
All right, let's just try something simple after knight c3, Peter. I see rook g7 on the board. He's still thinking after knight c3, can white just pick up the queen, and knight e2, you go king f2, knight c3. I can't take on f6 because I blocked my own f file.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, those things were not clear, but Wesley actually opted for d3. Wesley opted for d3. That's another intermezzo. Yeah, so this was the point that, yeah, black has many these tricky moves. You definitely have no time to move the queen, but both knight c3 and d3 are bringing these dynamics that you need.
Okay, wow. So d3, one thing is clear, that taking on e7 is a bad idea. D takes e2, both rooks under attack. White would probably end up losing there. So after d3, first thing that we need to find the refutation to is queen takes d3.
Yes, queen takes d3, and okay, then however, there are all kinds of craziness. Now queen c5 is already check, and then followed by knight f4. I mean, there are all kinds of, everything might be hanging. I don't know exactly. For example, queen c5, king h1, knight f4 or knight e3.
Knight
okay,
f4,
knight e3 runs in, no, even knight f6. Then the rook is hanging on g7. Yeah, this is all super tricky.
Maybe he can't pick up the d3 pawn then, because these knight e3, knight f4 jumps with everything on pre, looks like white will end up losing material there.
Yes, so white will probably need to move maybe to f3, because queen g4 would run into knight e3. I can't, or okay, who knows, maybe I can let this happen, then I have still the move queen h3, but this is, no, then queen take g7. No, I don't. I mean,
goes
this
for queen f2.
Yeah, because this one I cannot do. I was trying to attack the h7 pawn, but you probably not take, and after takes you take on f1, and this pawn will decide the game. So once you eliminate everything, so I cannot go. Yeah, Jan going for queen f2. Yeah, queen f2 or queen f3 were kind of the two natural moves, and Jan is down to 2 minutes on the clock. Yeah, we feel that how important this game is for Jan. Yeah, he feels the responsibility, and he's taking his time. He's certainly taking his time.
And it's just such an interesting position here. Absolutely so many dynamics. Now, Peter, queen f2. I am struggling to find another move except queen e4. I want to go queen c5, but my knight on d5 is just hanging. I think a move like queen c5 is immediately a no-go because e takes d5.
Yeah, because of ed. Yeah, exactly, probably. But I mean, the first question, yeah, exactly. Why can't you take queen e4?
Yeah, I think
queen e4 on the board, probably rook e1. Yeah,
it also stops queen f5. Queen e4 makes sure that there was no queen f5, and he goes for rook e1. So hitting that queen, and black needs to be a little careful here, Peter. Does he have to make the move d2 now?
Yeah, black definitely needs to be super careful. I mean, just one move and you lose. But yeah, the position is such that there is also this kind of dynamic in the position that maybe it can also work out perfectly well for black. It's
you know, Peter, the queen doesn't have a square in this position. I just realized that the queen on e4 has no square that it can go to, which means that maybe d2 is the only move that black has.
Yes, I mean, okay. I also spotted some, some crazy moves like rook e3 with, I mean, knight e3 with the idea rook e3, queen e3, queen e3, f2. I mean, sorry, d2, and now you have to somehow checkmate me, otherwise I queen this pawn.
But does this work? Because rook h7, what is going on in those lines?
Yeah, then okay, takes, yeah, queen e7 check, king g6, and knight f4, I go king f5, I don't see a mate, and queen g7, I can even pick up the knight. Yeah, I don't see the mate yet.
White could have started with knight f6 there instead of queen e7, because let's just go back. Instead of queen e7, knight f6, you have to move away, probably king g6, because rook f6, let's just point out, rook f6, there was queen e7, picking up that rook on d8 and stopping d1.
Yeah, but king g6 might just win the game, because you don't have any checks and you cannot stop the pawn. I'm gonna take your knight, and the pawn will, I mean, it's a complete, I don't know anything about the position. Maybe what I'm showing is complete nonsense, but I just want to show the spirit, yeah, that the players are down to less than 2 minutes on the clock, and it's a completely chaotic, crazy position with total madness.
Peter, I have a question, because that last position was so interesting and I can't get it out.
Wow, knight e3 on the board.
Knight e3 on the board. We might be seeing this. Peter, let's just keep the analysis going, because we've got the live board with us. This line that we were looking at, rook e3, you sacrifice the queen for that d2 pawn, queen e3, d2, rook h7, king h7, knight f6 is the only move in that position, because queen e7, there was no check. And I'm wondering if after king g6, queen g3 check, does black king actually escape from checks? Queen g3, queen h3, queen f3, queen e3 are my checks.
Yes, okay, but for the moment I was searching for a win from the white side, but maybe if there is no win, yeah, this is a very nice point, that black actually can't run away towards the queen side, because the d2 pawn is hanging, otherwise here.
And yeah, Peter, look at the position on the live board. We're going to be seeing something like this.
We're going to be seeing something like this, yeah. But if there is only this though, then it's not going to be so easy for Jan also, I think, to change his mindset, yeah, because he was trying to create some mating threats, and all of a sudden, now this pawn is forcing him to give up all his attacking pieces. I mean, these things are very, very unpleasant, practically, and down to 1 minute.
This is unbelievable, this position that we are seeing right now, that it has been played out. Also, let's point out that white had to pick up that knight with the rook. Queen e3 would have, Peter, if you just back up really quickly to that point, knight e3, a beautiful move by Wesley. Queen e3 is impossible, because black just trades the queens and goes d2, and there's no stopping the pawn from queening. So rook e3 was the only move, and the position that we have on the board, Wesley 1 step away from queening, so white needs to play a forcing sequence of moves. The only check in the position, take the h7 pawn. He's gone for it. And now the big question, does he go queen e7? Does he go knight f6? Or another check that exists, queen e4. Peter, I have a feeling knight f6, and that's the draw that we're going to witness in this game.
Yeah, knight f6 on the board, yeah. I mean, okay, kudos for both players. I mean, this game is just a brilliant performance so far. I mean, anything can still happen. But if after king g6, queen g3, we're going to be seeing this perpetual check, then you will understand, and everybody will understand why I'm never against draws. You know, I'm perfectly happy with draws, just especially when it's such a game.
I think these kind of draws we all love to watch and witness. This is a thrilling draw, but what we have against are all those anti-Berlin draws, those Grunfeld draws, but this is nothing like that. Peter, can you quickly also once again break it down, this idea? King g6, why it's a forced perpetual here. And the point is that you can't take rook f6, because queen e7 picks up the rook on d8, stops the d2 pawn from queening. So rook f6 is impossible. After knight f6, king h8 loses to queen h6, checkmate. So the king can't fall back. Black has to go king g6, not allowing any checks. But the point here, he's gone for king g6, queen g3 check. The knight will be picked up, and we are seeing this being played out as we speak of it. After king f6, or is there a move king f7 to keep the game going?
Yes, you can play king f7, but I'm gonna give you a check anyway.
Queen c7, and you have to eventually pick up
you're
the
gonna
knight.
try. Yeah,
On
king
the board,
f7
Peter.
on the board. We might be seeing queen c7 check, king e6. We're gonna be seeing it.
The point is that king f6 is just a draw on the spot. White gives checks on this f4, e3, g3, h3 squares. The king has got nowhere to run, because it can't move over to the d file. At that moment, he will lose the d2 pawn. So with nowhere to run, the only way black can keep chances is the move king e6. And then how does this, he goes king g6, so he's not trying it out. He's not playing king
Yeah,
e6.
because after king e6, actually white probably has this queen c4 check, which is very, very unpleasant. Okay, you can still take the knight, clearly, but okay, you understand that you anyway cannot run away, so basically it's a draw.
Wow, and we're going to see a repetition here. He goes king e6 finally. He goes king e6. I love it.
Yeah, he tries. He has not. He doesn't. He's not risking anything. But after queen c4 check, I don't think that Wesley will try. But maybe he will try king f5. But it will anyway run into queen if. White will simply force black to take this knight eventually.
Wow, so this one is going to end in a spectacular perpetual. Peter, do you think it's time to go to the other game? Because there it looks like Raja has messed up big time. Black's pawn on a2, knight a5 played, knight d4 runs into rook d4, king d4, knight b3, picking up that rook. How is white fighting against knight b3 here?
Yeah, for the moment I'm struggling to see why white is not supposed to resign. It looks like knight b3 is coming, or can he? Yeah, no, this is just lost. We have probably this game was, yeah, and Tanya resigns. Just some incredible performance by Magnus. Okay, Radjabov had to blunder something. I don't know what happened. Let's just go back 2 moves. Okay, so it at least got very, very tricky with all these pins and with black's pawn. By the way, we are seeing this perpetual check. Okay, first we're gonna deal with the Tanya game, and then we might come back to this.
And Peter, it makes me so happy that we actually called out this entire sequence of moves and this idea, and it's being played out.
Yeah, it's wonderful. You remember I even apologized that maybe it's total nonsense, this whole knight e3 everything, but finally I'm very, very happy as well that, yeah, it all made sense and draw agreed.
What a brilliant draw. Absolute thriller. Peter, let's quickly just go back to that Magnus game, because this was so exciting that we really didn't get a chance to watch the action there. The players have, for the moment, left the camera, so we can get back to the chess action. The first game ends in a draw in the Wesley-Yan matchup. Magnus Carlsen takes the lead in his round, but it didn't look like it was going his way out of the opening. What went wrong for Raja?
Yeah, well, yeah, the opening, it didn't look promising, but by this point when Magnus played the move rook c8, it already felt to me like if someone, probably white, is the one who needs to be careful. Suddenly black is too active, and after knight b3, immediately Magnus used this chance with bishop c2. Now both knights are loose, the pawn on a2 is weak. Radjabov kind of had to go for some forced sequence, which I don't think he really wanted, but he was kind of forced, yeah, and we see that he's not losing material because he has this knight takes f7, king f7, taking back the bishop, but suddenly, practically speaking, with this outside passer, it's only black who can be better, yeah, and it's kind of a difficult change of mindset, yeah. It felt like before that Tanya is having everything under control, and all of a sudden he needs to be careful. For the moment, it looks that this pawn is not so dangerous because, okay, the king is coming closer and you block, but black has this idea of bringing the knight to c4. And that's why the position is not easy for white. At least white will need to suffer. And Magnus, of course, playing super quick, probably also very, very confidently, putting suddenly pressure on Tanya. So Tanya is coming with his king and now using the momentum to break black's construction with e4. But it comes at a cost that the white knight on d4 is vulnerable. It's not protected anymore, and Magnus starts using all kinds of dynamic possibilities. And look at this. Here is the moment when probably all these things escalate. Rook a4 check, king d5, rook a5, king c5. White only needs one more move, but even then black still has knight c6. So it's not the end of the world. That's why Magnus can play a2. And now after king b4, knight c6, king c4, rook a4 check. Yeah, king c5 was a terrible blunder. It was losing on the spot because of knight a5. So probably white should have come back with the king to c3 and then try to defend. Okay, a very scary position, but still maybe defendable, but very, very unpleasant.
Wow, yeah, definitely. Only one trying in this position has got to be black, but that king c3 move makes a lot of sense. You make sure you don't fall into knight b3 checks. after knight a5, just game over, because if white tries to start knight b3 with knight d4, as we were quickly pointing out, black simply snaps up that knight. Rook a2 doesn't work at that moment. Let's also just show why this loses to knight b3, and here rook a2 for many reasons, but the simplest, knight b3 check keeps both pieces defended. And with that, Magnus, with the black pieces, takes the lead in their deciding set. Now, Peter, despite a lot of us talking about throughout the tournament that Magnus struggling, out of form, Magnus himself, we saw his interview yesterday, how much he feels and how critical he is about his own play. Yet when it comes to these moments and when it really counts, the world champion always finds this strength to actually come back and show why he's the best player in the world. And he does it right at the start, winning the game with the black pieces. Even when I was talking to chat in our pre-show about the favorite in this match, massive support. And a lot of chat was mentioning that no matter what the circumstances, Magnus is a huge favorite in any match. Where does this strength come from? How does he always manage to impress us in these decisive moments?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. I mean, if we go back, to this moment in the opening after bishop b5, knight c6, takes, you ask me, that, okay, what are the chances that Magnus is going to win this game? I would have told you 0. I mean, I just would believe that if black makes a draw, he should be very, very happy. And it's a fantastic result. But also with the, what really impressed me is that not that finally Magnus won the game. What impressed me that like in 5 moves after this position, from this position, he actually had no problems already whatsoever. Yeah, that was kind of very, very impressive. Of course, somewhere Temo didn't play optimal. It's correct, but I mean, it's truly stunning how he kind of solved all his problems immediately with all these things. And now already, if you ask me what is the position, I say black is completely out of any trouble.
Just amazing. This is such a special quality, I think, that he has, which many players struggle with. Often they go in tilt. It's hard to bounce back, to deal with that pressure in these positions. But we've seen him do that, not only in this rapid formats, I mean, coming back in that every round of his matchup against Hikaru. That was phenomenal play, always on that moment where he had to bounce back, he did it. Now Raja's got to do what he did yesterday. At some point, he's got to win a game to level the score. Currently, Magnus Carlsen takes the lead, and of course, the thrilling draw provided us with a lot of action as well. Peter, we have really set ourselves up with this game 1 for an absolutely amazing ride today with all the chess action. We've got a few minutes, so let's go into a break. We'll be back with game 2 of the semifinals.
You freedom.
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom.
It's the best show in town.
Let's show you that freedom.
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better. Live better.
Let's take someone with a random account, with a random name that just seems attractive.
play live online against the world's top chess players while they stream their thoughts live. As a Chess24 Premium member, seize the chance to have your moment of fame. Get a peek inside their lives with question and answer sessions, in-depth teaching, analysis and interviews. The Champions Chess Tour, with countless accompanying events, is happening now. Tune in on Chess24.
Take your chess to the next level with carefully selected collections featuring some of the best video series from Chess24. Buy the courses to own them forever, save up to 60%, or go premium and access all series while having all other privileges of premium membership. Learn more at chess24.com/deals.
Watch chess tournaments online? Don't just watch. Go to Chess24 and make it an interactive learning experience. You get live commentary in multiple languages, including different streams in English from beginner to expert. It's not just commentary, since there's also an interactive live board. Choose your game and try out your own moves. All moves by the players get near-instant cloud analysis from the latest chess engine, which will also analyze any move made by a premium user. Open the tab Opening Tree. It contains a database of 500 million positions from historical games. Has the current position ever occurred before? What did the best players play? The database tab lets you search full games and load them on the interactive board. There are many more tools for chess learners and experts. Come to Chess24 to watch all the online and over-the-board chess tournaments happening worldwide. Discover a new way to watch chess. Be part of the experience.
It's time to take control of your journey towards chess mastery. Magnus Carlsen introduces Chessible, the definitive solution for studying chess. Move Trainer uses the science of spaced repetition to identify your strengths and eliminate your weaknesses. There's no need to set up a board, remember which page you're on, or keep track of all the moves you miss. Move Trainer empowers you to go from the opening to the end game with confidence. It's a seamless, effective, and fun way to study chess. Choose from one of the largest online chess libraries in the world, with hundreds of titles ranging from classic books through to our exclusive Chessible courses, including over 100 free courses. Get expert insights from International Master John Bartholomew, Grandmaster Sam Shankland, International Master Christoph Sulecki, Grandmaster Simon Williams, World Champion Magnus Carlsen, and hundreds of other instructors. Get started now and join our growing community of over 100,000 chess enthusiasts at chessible.com. Chessible, take control of your journey towards chess mastery.
semi-finals now. As we can see on our scoreboard, Jan Nepomniachtchi has to win today on demand to force a playoff. Meanwhile, Magnus Carlsen takes his lead by winning that game one, even though Magnus's and Raja's game was the decisive one. All the action happened, Peter, in the Jan Nepomniachtchi Wesley So draw.
Well, that was really, truly spectacular. I mean, already, you know, this feeling that you can give up this G7 pawn because I'm not sure, you know, that Wesley, maybe he calculated everything already at that point, but still, I believe it was more his intuition was signaling him that there should be some counterplay. Yeah, there should be some counterplay. And then he went on to find this D3, Queen takes C4, Knight E3 and all this. And at the end of the day, even forcing Jan to come up with this brilliancy with Rook takes A7, Knight takes F6 and perpetual check. So quite a stunning game there. Kudos to both players.
Absolutely. And Peter, during the break, we were just discussing that it's exactly moments like these that make you realize that why the scoring system that many people suggest with 3 points for a win and 1 point for a draw doesn't work in the game of chess. Because very often the games that end in a draw are the ones where all the action and brilliancies are.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, okay, that it doesn't work, it's maybe of an overstatement. I definitely don't like it. And it's very nice, you know, because now that I'm not playing chess, it's very easy. I can say my opinion. Before, people would say, of course, Leko makes all these draws, so he's trying to defend the draws or whatsoever. No, I think that it's just very, very objective that if the guys play a perfect game, then by giving 3 points to a winner eventually where his opponent made a mistake and blundered doesn't really do justice. Yeah. But okay, this is again probably very, very, I mean, everybody very subjective. Yeah? Everybody has a different point of view, but I think it was a very nice illustration why I'm, for example, a big fan of the classical calculation.
I 100% agree with you on this, Peter. And what you just mentioned, that imagine for that game one, if Magnus was given 3 points and the Jan Wesley matchup was given just 1 point, as you were mentioning, it would feel extremely unfair given the quality of game that we witnessed in that draw. Now, what about this one?
Well, I think this is the bad news, yeah, that Magnus won the game and immediately he changes the mindset. He's leading the match. He doesn't need to do anything. He's ready to play a super solid system. And what I'm really worried of this Wesley, so the speed, how they are blitzing these things out. If we're going to be seeing one of those forced draws lines, look at this. This is just going too fast. Yeah, Rook takes B7. We're going to see again this line.
And these are the kind of draws that we are not a fan of, these theoretical discussions with these forced lines, which have been seen before. We've seen that happen in the ante-Berlin. We've seen it happen in Scotch position, in that C3D4 Italian positions. And this one also looks like it's headed in that direction, which we saw with Anish and Raja in the quarterfinals. And amongst other matches, Maxime and Wesley as well debated this. But Peter, even this one, I don't think different position, but I think the result is going to be the same.
Well, it's actually exactly the same. I mean, Wesley's position is exactly the same. We're going to be seeing this queen sacrifice and then finally perpetual check. Yeah, knight d3, bishop takes d4, knight e1, rook g7, and so on.
Yeah, I was talking about the Magnus game, Peter.
Yes.
Yeah, go on.
Yes, of course. No, the point is that when it's a knockout stage, I already perfectly understand this. Yeah, because it's kind of a match strategy. In this regard, I feel like for Magnus, actually it was much better to lose yesterday's game and come to this set with a 2-2 and winning the first game with the black pieces, because now suddenly Temur is confronted with the situation that his preparation was probably to be super solid from the black side and he will try to press from the white side. If he would have lost, I mean, if he would have not won that last game yesterday and equalizing the match, then he would have had basically half a day or 1 day to try to come up with an idea how he's gonna fight. But now adjusting to this situation, it's just very, very difficult. He first plays his main opening, and now Magnus shows that, okay, with white, he just doesn't want to take any risks. So the next game, because I cannot really imagine that this game will finish otherwise than a draw, it means that in the next game, Radjabov with the white pieces will be in a completely must-win situation, because otherwise he will be facing also a very, very unpleasant last game where he will not know what to do with black.
All right, so the other game has already ended in a draw in that repetition that we were talking about. And this one, the Berlin, a very symmetrical position. We've seen these battles several times as well. And yes, very hard to imagine. But I think Raja also doesn't have too much to complain about with the black pieces. He gets out of water without too much difficulty or turbulence. And of course, will play his final white in the next round. And I'm sure that's when maybe he'll surprise us like yesterday, coming out with some brilliant prep there.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, of course, for him, it's not a bad thing at all. Yeah, it's because he still knows that he has a wide game. Yeah, this kind of things, you are confronted with this when it's the last game. It's terrible. Yeah, it's normal that now he will adjust. Also, now that he knows that Magnus goes a little bit on the defensive. Yeah, from the white side, he doesn't want anything. We have seen it already in other matches as well. Yeah, that suddenly then the opponent. Yes, he feels the pressure, of course, because he needs to win the next game with the white pieces. But he also psychologically kind of feels like, aha, my opponent has respect. He's going on the defensive, and I should try to play on my opponent's nerves, try to keep the tension, and then look for chances. Definitely, I mean, this position, I believe we had already like 50 or 100 games for this position. Black was, I think, playing the move knight g7. This is the theoretical move. It was the first time, I believe, debated in Chennai in the match between Magnus Carlsen and Vishy Anand, when it for the first time happened, this line. And ever since, Magnus was many times included in this, involved in this battle with white and with black. And so far, black was always holding his ground without any problems.
Yeah, definitely, because basically there are no weaknesses in this position that either side has. And we see that white trades off the bishop with bishop e5. Yes, he gets that nice square for the knight on e5, but it's just not enough. Black also puts his knight on e6, tries to jump to f4 in several cases. Now, Peter, the other game which has ended, for those of us who are not very familiar with this Grunfeld draw, because definitely this one is going to be a slow game or a lot of trades, we'll come back to this. But I was wondering if you could just take us through, because white sacrifices the queen to achieve this perpetual. Let's just go through how this theory actually goes and why this line ends the way it does.
Yeah, okay, then let's go right from the very beginning. I perfectly agree that we have plenty of time because the Magnus game will not have any surprises. So yes, it's the Grunfeld. And the point is that this knight f3 c5 rook b1 line is the most principled and most sharp continuation. It's considered, like, for the last 25-30 years already, the most ambitious way of fighting against the Grunfeld. But it already also includes so much theory. And in this queen a5, bishop d2, queen takes a2 position after castles, the line with bishop g4 has a fantastic reputation. I mean, it basically almost in every single line analyzed till the very end. But I think if white wants to challenge black, then he can still try to play bishop e3, where probably black already knows how to make a draw. But still, for example, there are much less recent games with bishop e3 than all these drawish lines, and with rook takes b7. Because this move, rook takes b7, was already drawish back in my old times, like 25 years ago. I don't think that anything really changed, only that the line went deeper. I think that my old file from like 98 was saying that after e5, black goes knight c6 and black has no problems whatsoever, because the knight is coming to c5, rook is coming to d8, and it was definitely not the spirit of white why he plays for the rook b1 line. So the position got, of course, more analysis now after rook takes e7, rook a d8. White plays the e6 move. This is the justification. It tries to break down black's pawn structure. And this case, probably now all the tactical lines don't really work out for black. I mean, you cannot target the d2 pawn, I mean d2 bishop, because of this e takes f7 check problems. So black takes f e6. And now the problem is that, yes, the structure is damaged. So if white could somehow unpin himself and have an extra move, it would be super dangerous for black. But it just move per move. Yeah, the queen has to sidesteps from the pin along the d file, at the same time also attacking the e6 pawn. we see knight c5 jumps. White plays the move bishop c3, challenging black's fantastic bishop. And now, for example, if black would trade on c3, white trades queen takes c3, attacks the knight, and returns checkmate with queen g7 and over. So again, black is kind of forced to make the only move, but a very good one, knight d3, jumping, attacking the queen. And white has no follow-up because the black queen from a2 protects the e6 pawn. So there is no way to attack black's king. Otherwise, the bishop on c3 is hanging. White has no other move than to play bishop takes d4, sacrificing the queen. And after knight takes e1, we see this typical perpetual check mechanism with rook g7 check, king h8, and now the only check, but the good check, rook d7, closing down the d file so that the bishop on d4 is protected. And after king g8, rook g7, and the game ends in a draw.
Wow, Peter, that was quite a little masterclass in this Grunfeld line that you just broke down for us. Now, of course, I think it makes sense for Jan with the black pieces to not complain too much about this draw. He goes into round 3, his final white of the day. He needs to win this set. He needs to win this set to force a playoff. Now, game 1 that saw Jan with white go 1c4. He managed with his energetic play to get a dynamic position, making clear his hostile intentions, but it didn't quite work out. Wesley's defenses were really up to mark in that game. Are you expecting Jan to try the same line to start with the English opening?
No, I think that's the whole point in modern chess, that you can't really use such lines twice. Yeah, it was like a very good surprise weapon. We have seen that he got really nice practical chances, but one also has to give incredible credit for Wesley for playing such a brilliant game. I mean, it was by far not obvious, you know, that you will be able to defend the way he defended. He was also not just defending, he was putting the pressure on Jan, so that Jan never had a, you know, easy position that he could just make a natural move and stabilize his advantage. There was never a chance to stabilize the advantage. Wesley kept on, you know, challenging Jan's construction. Jan was playing very principled. He was about to win the game, but this stunning defense from Wesley saved the game, and finally it ended in a perpetual check. The big question is, yeah, how much such little ideas, or it wasn't even a little idea. I mean, such interesting ideas are in the sleeve of Jan. Yeah, usually I know for myself that just finding one against such repertoire like Wesley So is already a very big challenge. So in order that Jan managed to find this one little spot, it was already quite impressive. I don't know. I'm a little bit worried that it's kind of impossible to come up in 2 consecutive games with such an interesting, sparkling idea. But who knows? I mean, we are hoping for that.
He needs to do something. He needs to come out with the blazing guns in the next one, and it promises to be a nail-biting game, Jan's final white. And as you're mentioning, whether he repeats or not, a big question, because Wesley's team also now understands what Jan's preparation is and will definitely know how Wesley needs to react to that. So meanwhile, this action still on, but very, very docile, very easy-going stuff here. We see absolute symmetry in all pieces, in all pawns. Magnus almost looks like he's taking a nap currently.
Yes, well, I mean, if you look at the position, you understand that it's justified. Yeah, I mean, basically, this is the moment where you feel like even if you are playing asleep, nothing can happen. I mean, everybody has everything under control. The knights are symmetric. The structure is symmetric. I mean, yes, now white breaks the symmetric with g4, taking away the f5 square. Black might be going g5. Also, the queen trade is there in any moment. I mean, yeah, this game, I think this game has already been decided that it's a draw. The players are just taking a little bit time. Maybe also, you know, it's kind of part of the strategy that the team, yeah, for example, team Radjabov has now a little bit more time to work on the next game. Yeah, this is maybe a tournament strategy. Yeah, that's why Teimur is taking a little bit more time than Magnus, because he feels that, my team is still working, you know, they want to give me some ideas, make this game last a little bit longer.
All right, so h6 played here, Peter, and after h6, do you think if white was to trade on g5, does black keep complete symmetry once more by taking on g5, or actually takes with the h pawn, keeping the e5 square under control?
Yeah, I think that Black would have actually captured HG5. Yeah, there was just no reason why not to take HG5. Yeah, F5 played. Magnus also just wants to shut down the king side. Knight C4 jump is basically trying to provoke some kind of a weakness with B3. Then Black would jump back to D6 and then try to go Knight E4. It would not really change anything, but for the moment, probably Magnus even decides that, okay, I'm just bringing my king closer. Yeah, Black plays B6 himself. Now that Black played B6 himself, probably White can also just afford himself to play B3. But still, this F4, F5 at least brings little bit some dynamics. But of course, White goes Knight F2, making sure that the knight cannot land on E4, puts the king on D3, and there are no surprises here.
No surprises, just nowhere to break through. Is White going to ever try and go king D3, C4 and try and create something, or does he just sit happy on D3 and not do anything?
Well, it's a good question, because now the last move, king F7 from Radjabov, kind of signals that, okay, I'm just going to sit tight. I don't want anything from this game. And then it's now up to Magnus that will he try to play C4 and eventually try to get his knight to E3, putting pressure on the D5 pawn. And Radjabov says, no, my friend, I'm not going to give you the chance of going C4. I just want to block the position. Magnus goes knight D1, because knight E4 doesn't really do that much. Yeah, knight E4 can be answered by C4. And okay, Radjabov going H5. So he wants to provoke H3 and fix the weakness on H3. Okay, this is interesting. So
this is very interesting. And after H3, now he can also decide to go H4 and really blocking that pawn out on H3. Always White will have to be careful about knight E4, knight F2, hitting that pawn on H3, because that would be absolute disaster for White. Catastrophe if he loses the H3 pawn, which actually means that White's knight on D1 kind of doesn't have much of a life anymore.
Yeah, exactly. But the point is that it doesn't really need. It just clear that, yeah, White needs to put the knight back to F2, play the move B3, B4, forget about any kind of break, and then try to lock down the position. But hang on. It's a little bit tricky. Then Black's king could march toward B6, push A5, and if you would play A3, then suddenly Black would be able to target the A3 pawn with knight C4. So Magnus goes knight E3.
And after knight E4, does he want to come back knight D1?
Yeah, probably he has to. I mean, this is now getting a little bit tricky.
And Magnus coming back knight D1, offering a draw. And Raja immediately goes back, doesn't think about the plan of trying. There was probably nothing more to be done here. Both sides keep the position balanced. Peter, do you think there was any plan that Black would have with the king marching to the queen side?
No, the point was that Magnus played it very, very cleverly, because when here in this position after knight D1, Black would play the move king E7. It's clear that White would use the momentum and go C4, immediately breaking the construction. And after you continue with your king, actually White can just play C5. And once you reach the pawn to C5, then it's clear that everything is blocked down. Then White's king cannot come anywhere. You can also play.
You go.
Yeah, you can play B4, whatever, and you just sit. Black cannot make anything.
Can't make any progress there. So Magnus immediately after that pawn on H3 got fixed, found a way to shut off the game on the spot with this little maneuver of knight E3, knight D1. Peter, we've been talking about opening strat for the next game. Now, yes, definitely Jan, whether he'll repeat the English and if he's able to find another interesting idea in that or not, we'll see. But meanwhile, Raja playing with the white pieces also has to win this set on them, has to win one game in this set to level the score. Now, he went in for that Queen's Gambit declined in game one where Magnus employed h6. Magnus did win the game, but Raja got a very pleasant slight advantage out of the opening. Are we expecting a repeat of d4 and Magnus going for that h6 line again?
I think from Radjabov's point of view, it's very logical to play d4, because clearly it was also the move that he prepared for today, so he can rely on his preparation. Magnus did surprise him with this h6, but I mean, this is such a surprise that normally you say, like, it's more than welcome, please come up with such surprises against me. I'm perfectly ready for it. And look at this. Jan Nepomniachtchi's game is already kicking off, and Jan going for d4. So no c4 anymore.
Wow. So all our doubts put to rest. No English opening. He starts with 1d4, and we see Wesley. He's taken his seat. He's ready to go now. And what are we expecting from Wesley? Knight f6 here?
Well, look at this. I mean, I feel like Wesley is a little bit surprised that really, I mean, Jan, he knows that Jan needs to win this game. It's basically a must-win game for Jan, and definitely did not expect d4. And he's a little bit surprised, like, okay, what does Jan want against my main repertoire? Yeah, and there we go, knight f6, c4. I'm expecting e6 from Wesley. Yeah.
And looking at Jan, Peter, I get the idea that he has something up his sleeve. He has a little opening idea that he's going to employ, which we're going to see very soon, because he looks extremely relaxed and confident currently.
Yeah, he's trying to and knight c6 d5. Okay, so no Nimzo. This is already at least some kind of a psychological achievement maybe from Jan's side, because I think whenever you play knight c6, the biggest headache is like, what do I do against the Nimzo? Yeah, because the Nimzo is doing so good for black. But Wesley actually saying that, okay, if Jan in a decisive game for him ready to play this Nimzo, then definitely has some special idea. I don't want to find that out. And this semi-Tarrasch kind of setup is super solid for black.
We saw Peter Jan taking a sip from his cup, Wesley replying with a sip from a giant mug there. That was quite interesting. I don't know what that blue thing is that he's drinking.
And castles h4. Okay, so it's perfectly understandable, yeah, that Jan wants to play super sharp. And this is basically those ideas. I mean, it was the first time, I'm pretty sure, that the Karjakin-Kramnik game from Berlin candidates, yeah, that was the moment when Karjakin used this h4 and crushed Kramnik, and actually this game had quite a devastating effect. Kramnik then never got a chance to fight for winning that candidates anymore. I think it was quite crucial, and ever since this h4 move is hanging in the air.
All right, because h4 is such a direct line and it has all these ideas, you want to go h5, you want to bring your rook up into the game. What are the general plans for black here? b6, and he wants to get his bishop to b7 as quickly as possible and put pressure in the center. But first, you need to make sure white doesn't get h6 in.
Yeah, it's also kind of not entirely obvious that what white wants from this opening. Yeah, basically when he goes h4, that does white really want to push like Jan is playing, that he pushes the pawn to h5 and then develops bishop d3, or there is also the other concept, like to keep the pawn on h4, try to play bishop d3, try to play e5, and then go for knight g5 knight g5, and then, for example, if black goes h6, just leave the knight on g5 and try to ask, do you really want to take, and then you want to open up the h file. I mean, there are two different concepts like this. Jan opted for the more traditional one with h5, h6, and then see this, I mean, bishop d3, c takes d4, c takes d4 played, and look at this, Wesley immediately jumping at the possibility of hunting down white's bishop on d3. Yeah, that's the idea that black needs to do, because if he manages to trade white's light squared bishop, then all those weaknesses along the long diagonal, I mean, this b1 h7 diagonal, will not be an issue anymore.
I think black has to play with a lot of energy in this position and actually go for a direct plan like that, because imagine if white actually sets up that battery that you're talking about, bishop c2, queen d3, and gets e5. Once black has committed h6, there's nothing that can prevent the queen from coming to h7. So black can't play slowly in these positions. Black can't try and get the knight from d7 to f6, because that would allow e5. So I think knight c6, knight b4 makes a lot of sense. And white with h5, it's also very hard for white to go short castle now, because the moment he goes short castle, that h5 pawn is a weakness. Peter, in these kind of positions, knight d4, a threat immediately on the board, white king still in the center, with bishop c2 not happening, how is white developing? Does white want to play bishop e3 here? Does he go queen a4? Maybe queen a4 is actually quite interesting because it hits the knight on c6. It defends the d4 pawn. It stops the knight from jumping to b4. But the problem with queen a4 is that then you're going to be forever before you set up that battery along the diagonal.
Yeah, queen a4 is quite a desperate attempt. I mean, it's certainly not in the spirit, yeah, because once you go h4, you kind of scare your opponent. But if you follow it up with queen a4, then the guy can just start relaxing. Okay, that's it. My opponent got confused. He doesn't have any idea.
Bishop e2.
And bishop e2, yeah, it's yeah, white needs to. I mean, white needs to keep the center under control. The pawn on d4 needed protection, and white also needs to avoid the trade of his light square bishop. So the move bishop e2 makes perfect sense. However, black is just getting lot of tempos. Yeah, when I look at this position, I would say that if this is the idea behind h4, then h4 is not a serious move because black is just perfectly fine. If h4 is really serious, then it had to be combined with some other idea. I think that Jan a little bit lost the control, but look at this. He doesn't care. He doesn't want to castle. He basically wants to put king on f1. He goes rook h3. He wants to go rook g3, targeting this king side, and eventually hinting at some sacrifice somewhere.
Very interesting. Peter, your contempt for that move queen a4 also made a lot of sense that, you know, you don't play your h4, h5 pawn and then transfer your queen to the other side. But when you go bishop d3, bishop e2, it also feels a bit unnatural because you want that bishop on that diagonal. But the one thing that happened with bishop d3 was that black had to play knight c6. So white made sure that black's knight was not on d7, going to f6 where it could put pressure on the e4 and h5 pawn, which is probably what black could have done if white would have started with the move bishop e2. So there is a little logic to going bishop d3, provoking knight c6, and then coming back with the bishop to e2.
Yeah, also white basically provokes c takes d4. Yeah, this is also one of those little bit committal decisions from black. But of course, here it's perfectly justified because you are winning at least 1.5 tempos. Tempis with this whole cdc, the knight c6, forcing white to move because knight b4 is such a big threat. So if white would protect the pawn on d4 with bishop e3, that clearly runs into knight b4, and then you have direct problems. That it's not about the pawn on a2, but probably it's just like too many squares are also immediately vulnerable in white's camp. So there we go. Rook h3, rook c8, rook g3, king h8 played, and Wesley is basically calling out Jan's concept like, okay, I understand what you want, but how do you want to follow it up? My position is super healthy. Do you really believe that you can break me down like this? I somehow feel like, you know, also believing in such justice, like black didn't commit himself to any major problems. It shouldn't be justified like, okay, it's an interesting idea from white side, but objectively speaking, it should be perfectly fine for black.
All right, so a3, maybe what Jan is trying to set up with that move is go bishop e3, queen d2 next, taking control of that b4 square. So black doesn't have the option to go bishop b4 check, controlling everything, or knight b4 coming into c2. a3 is a nice little move that will always help white stop black's counterplay on the queen side. And you were mentioning how white can follow up, Peter, and I was wondering if the follow-up is around targeting that h6 pawn in black's camp.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, that's the weak spot, because if white could really get this bishop e3, queen d2 in, then there is almost no real good way of protecting. I mean, black has this rook e8, bishop f8 defense. This is kind of one of those natural ways of defending, but it's also a little bit slow. Yeah, it's but maybe, I mean, rook e8, bishop f8, super professional, just making sure that nothing can happen anymore on the h6 pawn. And especially also rook e8, bishop f8, finally, eventually this rook eyeing the e1 king. Of course, this white king will anyway move to f1, maybe even to g1. So white's king will be perfectly safe in the future. But if you are not doing this rook e8, bishop f8, then otherwise probably it would be time to try to ask a question on the e4 pawn by moving the knight. But whenever you move the knight, it also comes at the risk that maybe at some point white will be able to activate his own knight with knight e5. Of course, first taking care of the e4 pawn, but later on, for example, knight a5, white maybe just plays bishop d3, protecting the pawn, and now already all these knight c6 issues are not serious because white pawn on a3 protects the b4 square.
But after bishop d3, can't black actually go knight c4, making sure that you don't have these bishop e3, queen d2 idea? If you trade your bishop for that knight, I think black has all the reasons to be happy with that trade. So after knight c4, not so clear. But you can go, and he's gone for knight a5. We might be seeing this, as we can see on the live board, e4 pawn is attacked, bishop d3, blitzed that by Jan there. And now the big question with Wesley, does he go knight c4? He goes for it, Peter, he goes for it.
Yeah, he goes for it immediately. Yeah, he wants to use this momentum, yeah, that white's king is still in the center, pawn on a3 is vulnerable, also putting some pressure on the e4 pawn, and with knight on c4, he's also covering the e5 square. So of course, the knight on c4 is a much better piece than the knight on c6.
100%. And it also kind of shuts off that bishop on c1. We were discussing these ideas of a potential 8-6 sack. But with no bishop e3, queen d2 ideas in the air, it makes so much more sense for Wesley's knight to be on c4. That bishop on b7, eyeing that e4 pawn, a3 a weakness. Peter, white, is he in some sort of a potential trouble here? Very concrete questions. How is he defending all these pawns?
Yeah, well, basically, if white already goes for this h4, h5, and then rook h3, rook g3 kind of maneuver, it's obvious that he's kind of taking a lot of risk. Yeah, it's not like, I mean, white cannot now quietly play the position. Yeah, it's a completely chaotic situation. Clearly, black has his own play. Yeah, Jan just goes king f1. He needs to go king f1, and for the moment, I don't think that the a3 pawn is hanging, because probably with rook a1, it would, I mean, knight takes a3, rook a1 would work in white's favor. If the knight moves back, suddenly white can take rook a7. Makes a lot of sense from white's side. Now the question is also, how does black continue the game? White has a next move, king g1. Yeah, it's certainly a nice little improving move. And black has a lot of possibilities. Now also, there are some kind of arguments for a move like bishop d6, just, you know, asking this question like, where do you go with this rook? Or if you don't want to go, you really want to commit e4, e5, when black would just simply nicely retreat. And then
I mean, white, Peter, if white plays e5, and if you're not doing any great follow-up, then that only helps white with the plan of bishop c2, queen d3 next, no?
Yes, on one side, yes. On the other hand, also it compromises white's pawn structure very much. Yeah, so of course, if you get bishop c2, queen d3, it's wonderful. And yeah, we see the other plan, which I kind of also felt when it started, that maybe the knight can go to d6, target the e4 pawn, and eventually, you know, help making a crazy aggressive move f7, f5, with the intention that usually f5 is met by knight e5, and there is a big hole on g6. But with knight on d6, everything becomes very, very direct and concrete. So interesting concept from Wesley.
Very interesting. And this does put a direct pressure on the e4 pawn. So Peter, in this case, if white has got two ways to actually defend that pawn, you can either go queen e2 and keep the structure as is, or again, go e5. If white was to go for a direct line like e5, is black's intention to go knight e4, hitting that rook on g3, and if rook g4, there's knight c3 coming in. So this would be actually pretty bad for white.
Yes, this would be just catastrophe. So there is no way of white playing like this. The move queen e2 seems to be the most natural, but yeah, there are these questions with f5, and there is also a question with rook c3, because after rook c3, black has suddenly this idea of taking the bishop with the rook and then hitting the e4 pawn, for example, with the bishop, and white's position collapses. So there is a lot of pressure on Jan's position, and that's exactly what I feel, that black has a super healthy position. Yeah, that's the problem. So white is, white is not playing this attack from strengths. Yeah. Very nicely with this maneuver.
And we saw all our semifinalists on the screen there, completely focused. Of course, a big moment. The second game of the third game actually of the Magnus Raja matchup is also about to begin. Knight d6, a crucial moment. Peter, you mentioned this move after rook c, queen e2, rook c3. Very interesting with the idea of rook d3. And I have a crazy idea. After rook c3. And it's probably going to get refuted, but I'm wondering if black needs to be careful about bishop 8-6, g8-6, queen d2, and I am dreaming of mating on 8-6 and hitting that rook on c3.
Yeah, very nice put. So basically it means that rook c3 is just not possible, but Jan has already played the move d5. Yeah, but this is a very nice illustration that, yeah, there are all kinds of ideas, but if concretely it doesn't work, it doesn't work. So it basically means that after queen e2, probably black wanted to go f5, the move that we first discussed, and Jan decided that, you know, he wants to take a gamble. He goes d5, which means that after e5, he wants to go e5. But then knight e4, I mean, what is this? I mean,
e takes d5, e5 is a very thematic way of sacrificing a pawn, but that's often done when black can't block this diagonal with knight e4.
Exactly.
After e5, if you go knight e4, I don't see the justification of actually giving up that pawn.
Yeah, so definitely e5 is not the idea. ed5 will be, so ed5 probably white will play bishop b2, because you cannot play the move bishop f6, then e4, e5 is already a pin. I mean, it's a fork. So if you play the move f6, then again, white has already all kinds of possibilities. Then he can go ed5 and then knight h4, knight g6.
Knight g6.
Yeah, I mean, too many things. So I'm expecting bishop b2, but probably black will have a move like rook g8, just defending the g7 pawn with rook g8, not touching anything yet, because once you take on d5, black will anyway have bishop f6, and he is doing perfectly fine.
But even after rook g8, moves like queen d2 come to mind, always targeting that 8-6 pawn in all these positions. And let's not forget, black can never go bishop f6 because of e5.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, so because I felt like, you know, rook g8 might just be super smart, but yeah, queen d2 is very clever way of putting this pressure. And the big question is, yeah, I can't do bishop. Yeah, this is very tricky. Wow,
and
but
on the board, Peter, you
wow,
were right.
Very quickly we have to move to the Carlsen game, because Carlsen is actually playing Wesley So's weapon. I mean, this super solid endgame, which again, white seems to be slightly better, but Magnus just wants to make sure that he gets a very, very stable position and puts the pressure on Radjabov, because he needs to win.
Peter, we'll see how this pressure develops, but for me, all the excitement once again is in that Jan position. After sacrificing on d5, Jan playing bishop b2, as you were pointing out, that this is a probable idea of giving up that pawn on d4. You open up that diagonal. Black can't counter with a move like bishop f6 ever because of e5. Bishop g7, a huge threat on the board. Peter, after rook g8, queen d2, is there a defense for black that we are missing?
No, probably not. Yeah, I mean, this rook g8, queen d2 is super, super dangerous. But in fact, if there is no defense here, and f6 we don't like, and bishop f6 doesn't work, then does it mean that maybe actually black, in fact, has to ignore bishop takes g7 and play d takes e4? Is this completely crazy move the right move?
Oh my God.
And then bishop takes g7 check just to go king h7, just like this?
Okay, this is terrifying. I don't know how much it works or what this is, but if you allow bishop g7, it is absolutely terrifying to be black here.
Well, but if you win, it's fine, yeah? Because the problem is that queen d2 now can be met by knight f5. So that's why I need to eliminate the e4 pawn to vacate the f5 square for my knight. I mean, to make sure that I get access to the f5 file. So maybe actually it's bishop b2, d takes e4 is a key move. And I think Sotiris was mentioning that, yes, this is actually what the computer says, that d takes e4 is the move to play.
Amazing. And Peter, look at this. I just noticed the evaluation bar clearly indicates that black has a response, a very strong response to bishop b2. And there's Sotris confirming your line that the only defense that black needs to find here is d takes e4. If Wesley does not take on e4, he is in big, big trouble here.
Yeah, and this is actually the bad news for Jan, that if black would have some solid way of and yeah, there you go, d takes e4 on the board. There was just no other move, and Wesley is usually very, very good. I mean, he's never afraid of ghosts. He calculates like a machine, and he's calling all these bluffing ideas. Yeah, he very much enjoys, you know, to counter all this craziness.
Amazing. Bishop g7, king h7, and it looks super scary. But if black is not getting checkmated anywhere, which apparently he's not, then white in big trouble with all the pieces hanging, the bishop, the knight forked currently, and very important, this knight f5 idea, which would hit the rook on g3 and the bishop on g7 and defend the h6 pawn if required. Yes,
and this is a terrible scenario for Jan, because if he's risking a lot. Yeah, if he would, if his attack backfires and he loses this game, it means that Wesley moves to the final immediately. Yeah, that's it.
It's over. Wesley needs only 2 points today in their match because he did win set 1. All right, so bishop f8. Why have we not been looking at this line? White captures the rook. And Peter, what now? Because I see if you take the bishop on d3, queen d3 check, that's definitely not something that you want with the black pieces. Rook g7.
Oh, I will just take back this f8 bishop. I only don't know what's the difference between bishop f8 or queen f8. I mean, okay, I can also just take bishop f8, I believe.
And bishop c2?
Bishops, no, actually, hang on, because bishop f8, yeah, also, I don't know, maybe queen f8. Okay, I want to take on f8. Yeah, definitely I want to take on f8.
You're right about that. He takes on f8 with the bishop, keeping that queen on d8. And now after bishop f8, I need to find a way to keep both these pieces alive. I don't see another move except bishop c2 here.
Yeah, one of the things why I got scared, that not like you move somewhere the knight, and if I take e3, you're gonna play queen g4 and I cannot stop queen g8 checkmate. Yeah, but black apparently always has the move queen g5. So this is a very important moment. For a second I got worried. That's why I was not sure if I capture back on f8 with the bishop or with the queen. But once I know that all these knight jumps are not dangerous, the move bishop c2 doesn't frighten me. Maybe it should, but I feel like, you know, then I have so many possibilities. I have wonderful pieces, yeah?
This is amazing. Peter, can we just show that line that you were talking about, that if white actually moves knight d4, let's say, trying to set up a mate on the g file, or knight e5, as you were mentioning, black takes on d3, and queen g4 would be a very strong threat because you can't move the bishop from f8 because then there's mate on g7. But here, black has use of taking that bishop with his own bishop, because now the queen from d8 jumps into defense with queen g5, not only threatening a trade, but also rook c1 checkmate. So white is actually forced to trade the queens, and that is lost because d2 follows up and it's game over.
Yeah, of course. I mean, here if black is able to trade the queens, it's just over. So yeah, this is the problem, that it doesn't work. This case, white probably has to play this move bishop c2, but I mean, if white has to play bishop c2, I'm just not a believer in white's position. Besides, even there are many tactical possibilities. I mean, I'm not sure if I'm not losing on the spot. Yeah, this bishop c2 I can answer by knight f5, for example. I mean, what is really happening? Knight f5 hitting the rook, threatening to take on d1. You cannot take back with the rook because the bishop is falling. And if you take with the bishop, then already you don't have pressure on the diagonal. I
mean, in big trouble here.
Yeah, could it be that black is just winning here already?
I'm looking at the eval bar. It seems to be indicating exactly that, because if not bishop c2 and bishop c2 being answered by knight f5, as you're pointing out, it means that white ends up losing more material in this position. And is there a way to try and set up some kind of an attack, some sort of a hope? Peter, what about a move like queen a4? And it's completely stupid, but my only idea is that after e takes d3, which of course is not the only move you have, but at least after queen g4, you don't have queen g5.
Yes, that would be a nice Cipollito there. I mean, definitely, and a very effective one. Yeah, probably just winning the game on the spot. But I'm afraid that after a move like Queen A4, I have all kinds of moves. I can maybe target this queen. I can also just play a move like Queen E8. Also looking very, very promising, just trading the queens. I have also some B5, some bishop C6. I mean, I have too many moves. Finally, Jan opted for rook G4, but this is, I mean, what is this move, rook G4? Stepping out of knight F5, but it basically gives just gives the bishop.
But does it? Because after e takes d3, queen d3, the one thing is that if you put a piece on e4, maybe white just captures it. So you
no,
can't
I wanted to go F5. Yeah, F5 and then
d4 and
then bishop E4.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I just go like this. I mean, it seems like it's just over. Yeah, Jan is going rook d4, but this is a complete bluff. I mean, it's not bluff; it's the total desperation. But with 6 minutes of the clock, I cannot. I mean, two pieces. The black's king is perfectly safe. Two bishops in this open position. No, I mean, this is never going to work out.
Where do you break a player like Wesley? Just unimaginable. I mean, the thing is that when you need to create these chances, even when you have white going desperate and trying all these crazy ideas against somebody like Wesley, who's just so up to the task of finding these critical key defensive moments, it bluffs. And as you mentioned, Peter, these desperate ideas don't seem to work against somebody like Wesley, who never panics. He just never panics.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, because if he believes in his position, yeah, he knows that it's not justified what his opponent is doing, then he's just perfectly, you know, like a monster. Because okay, why should, like a computer, why should he be afraid if it does not work? But of course, we have seen already Wesley also getting into panic when he understood that what his opponent is doing is justified. Yeah, those are the different circumstances. But here it's just very easy for Wesley to understand that this never gonna work, and he's confident enough to call this bluff. And I honestly don't see any way for Jan to fight here. And this is what I've also mentioned, like in the first game, he had this idea of with c4, you know, and he got this playable position, everything. But here inside d4, I don't have the feeling that this is Jan's territory. Yeah, I mean, Wesley has so much more experience because he has been playing all this openings from white and black for a very, very long time already. And Jan is kind of still little bit newcomer to d4, I would say.
Is that Wesley wearing his jacket, getting ready for his interview?
Really? Yeah, he wasn't wearing the
jacket.
Put on his
jacket
so far
for a moment there.
Okay, because I would say, you know, if that would be the case, this is the only good news for Jan. Because if somebody is already getting ready for a celebration and the game is still in progress, then it gives some chances. But if Wesley is not in celebration mood, then I'm very skeptical about Jan's chances.
Yeah, and with a slight smile on his face there, I think he realizes that it's one of those positions where you need to really trick your opponent, objectively completely lost for white, as we're also seeing confirmed by the evaluation bar that Wesley So. But no, Peter, I was wrong. The jacket comes off once more. So unfortunately for Jan, Wesley is ready to find all that needs to be found in this position. He plays the simple queen c7, gets out of that pin on the d file. A good moment to get an update on our other game, because in that I see that Raja has an extra pawn. Is that some real chances to come back into the match?
Well, this is theory. I mean, I believe that this game where Jan was trying to break the world record against Wesley, I believe featured exactly the same position. It's the line where black plays some f4 and then finally the knight takes on e5, and then we see this bishop versus knight position. I believe that already, like one of the very first games, wasn't it like Carlsen-Radjabov against Wesley So in Skilling Open when we first saw this line? I think maybe I'm wrong, but it might have been. I remember something like this. The big question is that did Carlsen come up with an improvement, or secondly, is Magnus, because it isn't his style, you know, to play like this. Will he remember all the finesses of the position? Because if you are not knowing all the computer reactions here, then it might not be so easy over the board. Yeah, rook d4 played by Magnus. Rook d4, was it the move, or, I mean, I'm not into these details. I have just seen these games, and I remember that we saw this f4 knight takes e5 position, but whether something new happened here, I don't think that something new has happened, however. But okay, for the moment, let's stick to
jump back.
The Jan Nepomniachtchi Wesley So's game, because this might just seal the match for Wesley. So really a lot at stake here.
All right, so very nice technique by Wesley. He's trying to get rid of the key defender, the active rook on d4, so that d3 pawn can just march his way further on the board, taking advantage of the fact that white played queen f4, and now after rook c4 can't really escape the queen trade. How is white surviving this? So he goes rook d1, still trying to keep it. He just takes and goes queen c4 anyway, but then you lose the d3 pawn.
Yeah, but I mean, who cares about the d3 pawn? Yeah, you just trade the queens and basically force resignation, because the two pieces, white has also damaged pawn structure. Yeah, Jan has no right to change the queens. The only problem is that keeping the queens doesn't give him any hope as well. Besides, I would not even be surprised if Wesley just tries to. He even has, okay, it's just such a lost position from white side that I think this is, there is no need to comment this. Yeah, this is like Jan needs some incredible miracle, and the miracle is not chess-wise, it needs, like, you know, Wesley needs to make some mouse slip. Basically, I really believe that here white's only chance of winning this position is due to mouse slip. Chess-wise, it's just impossible.
That bad a position, huh?
Yeah, but of course, when you are having such a position, then making sure that you never gonna make a mouse slip, I think it's already part of the automatism and reflexes of these players, because they have so much experience.
All right, knight b5, taking the knight to the other edge of the board, and that gives white the opportunity to pick up the d3 pawn, also defend the a3 pawn. Or is black just planning to go for the a3 pawn regardless?
Well, little bit. I have to say, I'm a little bit puzzled and shocked that Wesley really feels like, you know, hunting down this a3 pawn is the most important thing.
Maybe bishop c5 is the point, Peter. Bishop c5.
Bishop c5 would be very natural, but you know, I know Wesley, that he's never. I mean, if you already went knight b5, probably he wants to collect and then go bishop c5. And okay, the pawn. I mean, these pieces are so incredibly powerful with this pawn structure, because the queen on from c7 protects the f7 pawn, and the knight will invade now the position with knight d4 or whatever. And I think it's not early to design at all. It's just completely hopeless.
Wow. That was a nice little jump there that happened with knight b5. Looked like it went on the other side unnecessarily of the board, but then finding itself right in the most important square, d4. Also picking up the a3 pawn on the way, rook e3. The main thing that white needs to do when he's fighting against two pieces and he's got a rook is use open files and create an attack. But here, just impossible to imagine any kind of an attack against the black king, because these pieces, this construction, Peter, with queen c4, knight d4, bishop c5, just control all key squares. What is the target in black's position? Where does white create any play against that king on h7?
No, that's the problem. Yeah, that you just cannot create any play. And also the last moves from Wesley with a5 and just pushing this pawn indicates that he believes that, you know, white has just absolutely no threats. Besides, yeah, even not besides, I just don't know what to mention, because okay, everything is winning for. The point is that you, from one side, you feel it, you feel like you might want to try to get this knight to f4. On the other hand, the knight on d4 is so nice, blocking all the squares, and after knight e6 anyway, white has a move like rook e4, taking control of the f4 square. So this whole knight e6 doesn't seem to do anything to the position. So just no reason to move this knight at all. And white doesn't have a follow-up. Basically, white's follow-up is something like queen somewhere, but I'm even, because once you go queen e3, then you move the knight, because then, yeah, okay, Wesley is just, I think, struggling to understand what white wants, and that's his only problem, that he sees that white cannot do anything at all.
So many pleasant options. So then can black just continue with his advance of the a pawn? Is a4 a move that that can be played here, simply saying that white has no active plans? Or is queen f4 something to worry about?
Wow, but yeah, maybe white's next move is queen f4. At least you are coming a little bit closer, even then it's not obvious what you are settling. But Wesley plays the move f7, f6, you know, certainly a move that I would have said, you know, just a few moves before that, completely unnecessary. On the other hand, it's perfectly also justified because the bishop on c5 covers the e7 square. So white has no way of reaching the 7th rank. Yeah, that's the problem, because if white would be giving a check on the 7th, if it would be possible, then it would be again a serious game. But without this check, and eventually also black counting on some queen g8 check. Yeah, that's kind of the point, that if you move the rook, like rook e5, Wesley gonna go check, king f1, play even queen g1 check, and king g1, knight takes f3, for example, a nice way of liquidating into an endgame. Yeah, so very nice spot also there by Wesley.
That's a really nice line, Peter, that f6, it's not hitting the rook, but this concrete tactical idea of going queen g8, ideas of queen g1, and if after queen g8 you go king h3 to avoid queen g1, there's also queen g5, many times forcing a queen trade, attacking that h5 pawn. So a very direct way by Wesley here, making a committal move, weakening his own king, but calculating it till the end, and this means it might be wrap up in just a couple of moves.
Yes, I think it's just over. I mean, it's also no fun to be on the white side. Yeah, you know exactly you have no chance. And this f6, f5 was also very nice. You know, like forcing. Yeah, I look at Jan. It looks like, yeah, he's kind of gathering the strength to, because he knows, yeah, if he loses, then it's match over. And then probably the yes today will come back to haunt him very, very much, because if he would have not lost that last game, then he would have not needed to do this kamikaze business from the white side. Yeah, that was kind of the very bad, unfortunate thing from, yeah, rook e8 finally played. From yesterday's loss in the last game, that it gave Wesley also this chance of, you know, using his super smart strategy of just being super solid from the white side and putting the pressure on Jan.
Yeah, absolutely. And I don't know what hurts more, Peter, losing that last game in a complete draw or missing rook a3 in that game 3, which would have sealed that game for Jan. So definitely two big results that must have hurt him, and difficult to come out of that psychologically as well. And then being in this win on demand situation when really it should have been your opponent who should have been in that situation, makes things very complicated, makes you take all these decisions that backfire just the way they are right now. Rook e8 on the board, and I'm wondering, this stops queen g8, but queen f7, hitting that rook and that pawn on h5. And after queen e1, very importantly, bishop on e5 defends that e7 square. So with none of that hanging, does this give a black the time to go queen h5, or queen h5 attacking that f3 pawn as well?
Yeah, black has so many options. Yeah, black can take on h5. White can also play queen g7 check. Yeah, queen g7 check is played, because maybe after queen takes h5, white could try something like, I don't know, or queen e5. But you know, queen g7 just super nice, making sure that white will not have any counter chances. Besides, the f3 pawn is also falling, and where does this white king goes? I mean, white king is in a mating net.
And wherever it goes, knight f3 hits that queen, and all pieces playing against the white king. It looks like that's the king that's in danger right now, not the king on h7.
Yeah, king on h7 is just wonderfully placed. King on g2, yeah, king h1 is played, but now after knight takes f3, it means that the white has to stay on the first rank. So something like queen b1, but then queen f7, and you have, I mean, yeah, that's it. I think knight takes f3 followed by queen f7 just forces resignation on the spot.
And knight f3 on the board, it's been played.
Yeah, knight takes f3
and how you just can't do anything. Queen g1 is a big threat, so you have to keep the queen on the first rank, and then the black queen bounces back to f7, hitting the rook and the pawn on h5. This is disaster. This is a complete collapse for Jan with the white pieces today.
Yeah, right from the beginning. Basically, after this d takes e4, yeah, that after move 20, bishop b2 could be answered by d takes e4. The game was decided. Yeah, it was, because the rest is just agony. Now just queen f7 and okay, it's over.
So queen d1 played, queen f7. I'm also keeping an eye on the other game, Peter, but let's just wait and see the end of this game, because this is such a big moment for Wesley. If he wins this one, which looks like it's going to happen any moment, attacking that h5 pawn and that rook on e8, it just means that it's over. It's semi-finals over in this matchup. Jan Nepomniachtchi will crash out in that case, and Wesley would be our first finalist of the FTX Crypto Cup.
Yeah, I think it's already certain, because it's just a matter of moments when Jan will resign. The game is lost, and everybody knows it. There is just nothing to fight for here. It's a lost position, plus you are getting checkmated as well. So you just cannot put up any fight.
And yeah, not resigning. He's still trying to think of some way to keep the game going. But that's the problem. You can't even come up with, and that's it. He's had enough. And with that, congratulations to Wesley So, who is the first player to enter the finals. And now, of course, it is going to be all about whether he faces Magnus or he faces Raja. We see Jan there, of course, very disappointed and heartbreaking for him, because set one was really in Jan's hand, and some big opportunities missed that came back to haunt him in today's set. And Wesley So, a player who with his draws has sparked many a debates, many a controversies, but despite that, just showing how strong he really is when he's in the battleground and in for a fight.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, and we have seen, and we have been talking about this, that some players, when they get the lead, they tend to get nervous and like this. I mean, for Wesley, I mean, once he gets the lead, I mean, he just becomes so confident, and his play gets stronger and stronger. And I think also kind of his opponents know it already, that, yeah, if you fall behind against Wesley, then probably there is almost no way back. Jan definitely tried fantastically in the first game today, because it was very close, and Wesley had to play some incredible chess to escape in that one. But yeah, now in the third game, it was just too easy. I mean, it was a little bit too easy. Jan was maybe too impulsive, too emotional, you know, trying to create immediately everything, but the position was not, I mean, not giving these chances. Now after queen f7, there is one line that we could just quickly show, like queen d8, because it's the only way like you are trying to create something. But it seems like it runs by force to a mate. Queen takes h5 check, king g2, black plays queen g4 check. You're going to play the move king f1, black plays knight h2 check, only square king e1, and then bishop b4 check. Seals the fate of the game.
Also,
and,
Peter, maybe it would have been also quicker to go queen h2, queen f2 mate.
Yes, also, but I mean, it was just like demonstrating that why Jan already had enough and he didn't want to show all these things.
Absolutely. And with that, Wesley goes into the finals. He's the only player of the event who's undefeated so far in this entire tournament, counting the preliminaries, counting every game of the quarterfinals. A phenomenal performance by Wesley, and he is going to be an absolute beast to get past in the finals. All right, now it's all eyes on this game, Peter, because this is the only one on. Let's back up and see how we got here and all the subtleties that exist in this position. Raja still a pawn up and fighting for advantage here.
Yes, absolutely. I mean, I don't know where. Okay, we can just very quickly start from the beginning. Yeah, this is the line that Wesley actually introduced, and ever since it's getting more and more popular. It doesn't look very nice for black, but if it holds, it holds. Yeah, that's how modern chess works. This is a heavily debated line already. It was played in this game between Radjabov and Wesley So for the first time in the Skilling Open in November. So everything, all this whole sequence of moves, you know, because it's very challenging. White has to be very energetic. White goes with this line, wins back the material, and black has some weaknesses. So after rook a8, fe5, rook f8, rook e3. This is still theory, but here the move was rook d5. Yeah, this was the move that was played by Wesley, and probably it's the right move. Magnus, however, not knowing all the nuances, and that's, you know, exactly, it's not like you're gonna play this line and it works out. You can play it if you know everything. If you don't know everything, then even if you are Magnus Carlsen, you will not find all these computer precision moves. And after rook d4, it gave Temur the chance of playing bishop c2 and stabilizing his position and keeping the pawn. I mean, we don't know exactly if this is going to be decisive. However, one thing is for sure, that black is in for some terrible times, because he needs to protect now a pawn down endgame.
This is a dream position for Raja considering his mat situation. He did it yesterday, came back in a decisive game 4, and looks like he's managed to do it in his final white of the day. He is a pawn up, as you're mentioning, controls the position. Peter, what are black's best hopes here? Would it be to try and trade off the knight and bishop, get into a rook pawn ending, or does black need to actually keep all pieces here?
Yeah, well, Temur opted for rook f3. It basically indicates that he doesn't mind knight d4. I don't know exactly if after knight d4.
Rook d3.
Yes, I mean, probably rook d3 or rook c3. I mean, just one of those moves. And well, it's pawn. It's a healthy pawn up, but on the other hand, of course, this pawn on e5 is slightly vulnerable. So there are good, I would say there are good drawing chances, but certainly black is in for a very, very unpleasant defense. So I don't know. I mean, and look at this. Okay, the clock situation gives Magnus some hope, because Temur still only has, I mean, he only has less than 3 minutes. And yeah, knight d4, rook c3 on the board. What is, yeah, Magnus will need to trade on b3. Probably he will need to trade on b3. But then also rook c7 checks are coming.
But rook c7, maybe rook d7. If you go knight b3, rook c7, can black actually trade the rooks and after ab3 go king e6 then?
Exactly, yeah. This is a very good point, that this one still works out for black. So this is not good for white. In this regard, that means that after knight takes b3, he will need to capture back on b3. And I think we also have a special guest. No, Tanya, I think let's welcome Peter Swidler. Are you ready to join us already?
I hope so. I don't know if everything works properly, but I hope so.
Peter, you're just in time for a very exciting rook pawn ending.
I am more than ecstatic to make about 5 mistakes per sentence in this endgame. Yeah. Can I just stay silent until this game ends and listen to Peter?
No, I need some help here, you know, because I also feel exactly the same, that whoever talks in this endgame will make the mistake. So let's share the responsibility.
Yeah, I don't know. I've heard you talking for the last maybe minute and a half, and I was also sort of in agreement that this is going to be trouble for Magnus, but now it feels like he might be holding this reasonably comfortably, no? Because, like, how do you stop king e6? And then you have to put your rook on a very, very passive square somewhere. And I'm not even sure you can keep the e5 pawn. Ah, no, rook a3 is clever, though, because a6, he wants to go rook b3, I guess. Or rook a4, h4 as well, yeah.
Yeah, or, yeah, basically both things, because, okay, if black wants, black can play b6, then...
Yeah, but then rook a4, I guess, yeah. I missed rook a4 completely. You're absolutely correct, yeah. Yeah, and that is not going to be a comfortable draw at all, yeah. I guess, I mean, we can go rook h7. It's extremely sad, but we can go rook h7 maybe.
Yeah, and this is a good spot, yeah. How do I, yeah, it's very, but of course, yeah, very, very tricky position. Yeah, Magnus going b6, definitely b6 is better than a6 here. And then, but now the c6 square, so Temur comes back.
Yeah, that's another reason why he provoked b6. This is very smart by
Peter. We do have Wesley in our studio, so let's hear it from him first, and we'll come
absolutely,
back.
Yeah, sure.
I think the candidate, he might still be a bit tired from candidates, so I don't think he played his best today. But in all honesty, I think he was putting me in a lot of pressure in a couple of games yesterday. Also today in the first game, I think I was under severe pressure in the middle game, and I think he missed a win at some point. So I was very fortunate. But the third game went surprisingly well for me. I decided to avoid the Nimzo-Indian because clearly he'll have something prepared, and I went for the second line with the semi-Tarash, which I don't think he was prepared for that, because I got a very comfortable position after move 15. And he blundered at some point.
Yeah, it was a crazy game, this final one. Well, Wesley, we haven't seen you in the final the last two tournaments. Opera Euro Rapid was the last one. So what is it like being back in there?
Oh yeah, I'm very glad and happy to be back in the finals. I mean, I think every player here is tough. So I mean, doesn't matter quarterfinals, semifinals. You're gonna have to play a strong opponent. But to be in the finals is special, especially this one. I'm hoping for a rematch with Magnus.
Yeah.
But at the same time, of course, Tamor would be a very tough opponent also, and it's not clear at this point who's gonna win their match. It could very well possibly head into a blitz, but yeah, I'm very pleased, and hopefully I have enough energy to play the finals.
And Wesley, looking forward to that final. You've in the past you've mentioned that you don't see yourself as the favourite, but surely you must be the favourite, no matter whether it's Radjabov or Carlsen, because you've been undefeated this tournament throughout the tour. You've been fantastic. You've beaten Magnus in 2 finals. How would you evaluate your chances? Are you the big favourite in that one?
Yeah, no, I think Magnus is the favourite in any match still. He's not showing any signs of slowing down at this point in his career, so he's still the favorite any match. But again, as usual, I hope to put a good fight and put up some entertainment. And it's hard to say, but any match with Magnus is a big honor already, and a good learning experience.
And I'm curious to know, what were your chess preparations like? Because today you knew that Nepomniachtchi would be coming at you like a madman. So how did you prepare for that?
Well, I had a lot of sleep, 10 hours of sleep, first of all. I was solving some positions yesterday, and also earlier this morning, just trying to stay sharp, just solving some difficult positions. Also, I did some opening preparation before the tournament. In fact, the semi-Tarash in the last game was one of my prepared lines with the black pieces. And I mean, I thought that Ian would go for d4 at some point. I mean, I thought there's a 60% chance he would play 1e4 and another 30% chance to play 1d4. And yeah, it went well. So basically, just prepare a little bit in the opening and then try to stay sharp.
Finally, Wesley, I'm curious. This might be a stupid question, but I'm noticing the boxes behind you. Are those moving boxes?
Yeah, those are Apple boxes. Well, we moved recently to a different place in Minnesota. So we've been living in this house for 2 years, and also my sister and my mother has an online store, so they kind of need online boxes to put or Apple boxes to put their stuff. But
cool.
Yeah, it's for the camera, really. It's for the second device, but it proved to be very handy. And yeah, when we moved 2 years ago, we had like 200 Apple boxes.
Wow. So it's apples, Galaxy apples.
Yeah, I should probably move.
Wow, Peter, Wesley, humble as ever, mentioning that despite having a phenomenal performance throughout the event, if he faces Magnus in the final, he still believes Magnus would be a favorite. But of course, right now, nothing is clear. Raja has created chances in this rook pawn ending. You were mentioning this exact counterplay. What is this like? Does Raja have some real winning chances here with that H passer and the king activity on b5, a6?
Absolutely, yeah. I don't know how you're supposed to hold this. I thought a6 check was smart, But I think the point after a6 check is we take on a6 and then we go back to b5. We don't do, like this. And then we have rook h6 takes b6 later. This might be, we can play b4 even first, and then we can go after the b pawn. This looks horrible. So Magnus avoids it by playing rook e5 check. Yeah, that's a good move though. Yeah, I've underestimated, let's put it.
Okay, but still, white can play king c6, yeah?
Yeah, king c6, and then we have b3 in case of rook. I guess rook e4 though. Rook e4, b3, rook b4. Black does generate a decent amount of counterplay here.
Yeah, rook e4, very important.
Yeah, maybe Magnus is going to hold this. Currently, I don't know how to refute rook e4 because king b5, rook e5, we've just been there. You can go all the way back to b3, but we've been there as well. And b3, rook b4 appears to just be losing the pawn for no obvious benefit. So
what happens if both these pawns on the queen side get traded and there's 2 and 1 on the king side with white's king cut off on the queen side? That should be an easy draw for Magnus.
Yeah, that's an easy draw, I think, in most cases. But with the white king so far away from where it should be, I think it's just very, very simple. But even I think with the let's say the absolute maximum with the king somewhere around the f4 square already, as long as we don't lose the f5 pawn sort of by force, we are, I think, out of risk there as black.
Maybe then white will need to come back. Yeah, I also don't see anything else. Maybe I need to come back and then just try to keep my pawn. Of course, it's very passive. It wasn't Timur's idea. That's why he's going down on the clock. He doesn't want to play like this. But if there is nothing else, then maybe we have to.
Yeah, you go all the way back to a2 or something, and you just continue the game, because one thing you need to avoid is just making a forced draw. You must just keep pieces on the board and hope there's a mistake somewhere. And yeah, it seems like Timur has come to the same conclusion. Yeah. Unsurprisingly. Yeah, he now will play king b3 and
yeah, it makes a lot of sense, as you were pointing out, that any other move, you end up trading a pawn or maybe even both pawns on the queen side. That counterplay with rook e4, rook b4 looked very strong. But now with the king falling back, once again, not really clear how white will actually improve. Even if you come back to c2, black keeps the pressure on with rook e4. You have to play b3.
Yeah, I think you have to play b3. Yeah, you have to play. I like king a2 actually to have a safe haven somewhere on the a3 square. And eventually I think the rook will have to get activated. Like you'll have to play either rook h7, or in case of king g6 you might have to play rook h8, rook a8 or something.
Also, let's point, I just want to point out that actually after rook e4, I think white will have to make the move king a3 before he goes b3, because otherwise black's king starts hunting the white rook. King
yeah, that's a very good point. Yeah.
But I mean, even that is kind of tricky, because of course, if I can play king a3, I will play king a3 for sure. Yeah. But even whenever you hunt, I might start collecting those pawns. Yeah? And thanks to having an extra pawn, it will be, once we start hunting it down, it might benefit me.
Yeah, and also Timur I think he absolutely has to treat this game as a must-win, because I mean, Magnus will be extremely pragmatic if he just needs a draw with the white pieces in the last one. So yeah, Timur, if it like devolves into some kind of a pawn race with the f pawn against the two on the kings on the queen side, even if it's objectively a draw, at least it's a sharp position where things can go wrong for black. So yeah, Timur needs to. I mean, he will welcome any kind of a complication of this endgame. But for now, it's not even clear how black is supposed to proceed here. You can play rook e4, king e3, king g6. I play rook h8, and I kind of hint I'm ready to play rook a8 there. And yeah, I don't see anything immediate.
Yeah, and Magnus is also not really seeing. Yeah, finally goes king g6 down to 42 seconds. I mean, he also had like 2 minutes. He burned almost all his time trying to figure out how he can force things. But yeah, there is just nothing. He needs to just defend this position passively.
Yeah. But yeah, if you have to switch to passive defense, it's really, really unfun, obviously, because then the king will once again start slowly climbing towards, I don't know, the b5 square. And yeah, if you're not generating any counterplay, you're not really feeling very excited about this. And yeah, he goes for this trade, f4, gf, rook e4. He probably had to, but I don't know how optimistic you are having to go for this. Like rook f4, you go rook a8, I suppose, or maybe rook b8 is slightly more precise because maybe you want to stop a5.
So what's the line after rook e4? You go king a3, defend.
I think king a3 is the most logical move. Yeah, rook takes, and yeah, I'm choosing between rook a8 and rook b8. I think rook b8 might be a bit more precise, just to try and prevent black from playing a5.
That's actually a nice idea, and you've got a big threat of going rook b7, winning the pawn.
Yeah, and actually rook g8 check is very clever because he starts by driving the king to the h file. That's a very clever touch because king f7, rook a8 looks, or yeah, he does play, but now rook b8. Yeah, rook b8
Rook
maybe
b8
wins.
wins the pawn, but the eval bar hits it. What happened?
Is he in time to play king e6 and rook h4? Ah, he goes king e6 now, or maybe rook h4 first. He goes rook h4 first. Rook b7 check, king e6, rook a7, king d6. Ah.
Wow, I mean, if he escapes like this, it's incredible.
All right, let's slow down and just understand this concept one more time. What really happened in the last few moves? Peter, can you break this down to us and explain this to us one more time? Why rook b8 is so bad and why rook a8 had to be played there?
Well, I mean, the problem is that it's very, very important that I mean, black's king is not reaching the king side and eliminating does not reach the queen side and eliminates the h2 pawn. And now Magnus is just in time to get that. Look at this, rook h4 and king e6 both. And that's why the move rook b8 was such an unfortunate move. Now he needs to get back with rook to e2, but this is now very drawish.
So
yeah, I wonder why he didn't take on h2, honestly. Like, this is probably still a reasonably comfortable draw, but he could have just... Yeah, actually, this is just completely drawn, like a5, rook h3, and nothing is ever happening, right?
Yeah.
So black should fix it up with a5.
Yeah, a5, rook h3, and the pawn on b3 is so weak that white never really makes any progress. So yeah, it's a perfectly comfortable decision anyway.
Peter, this is making me think that move rook g8 check that we thought was such a nice move before he went to the queen side to attack just actually allowed Magnus's king to come closer to the queen side, a very important defense. And Raja there realizing that it's gone a bit wrong.
Yeah, but it's too late. Yeah, I mean, it's unfortunately for him now, he lost all the chances. Yeah, and Peter was mentioning that this was a must-win game for Temur. I mean, basically this is now, yeah, and draw agreed, nothing to play for here.
Yeah, you just don't have any way to make any progress at all. It's completely equal.
Yeah, and this gives us now the chance to understand that after king f7, probably if he would have now played the move with rook a8, forcing black's pawn.
How do you reply to a5 though? a5, what do we do here?
Okay, then rook b8.
Yeah, but how do you win this position? Let's say I go rook b4. I don't know which one is stronger. I think rook b4 probably is my preferred solution here.
You go rook b4, yeah?
Yeah, I guess you play something like... The plan has to be rook c8, b3, rook c4, right? To create a threat, yeah?
But how do I get
Yeah, but how do we get that? Or maybe we go rook h8, rook h5, rook b5, actually. That is also... But at least we're not losing the h-pawn. And as long as the h-pawn stays on the board, it's at least going to be... And in such a way that black doesn't get as much activity as in the game.
Exactly, yeah. I mean, this one was still definitely a chance. But yeah, after rook b8, rook h4, Magnus immediately jumped at the chance. He activates the rook. And yeah, finally... Temur managed to protect his pawn on h2, but this is what we are talking about. This is completely different structure because this position that we discussed here with the rook h8 and then rook h5, rook b5 idea, we are ready to continue the game and still target this pawn. If it's enough, it's a completely different question. It feels more like a draw than a win, but
yeah, I would suspect it's probably closer to a draw, but my understanding of rook endgames is generally not to be trusted.
Yeah, wow, but okay, this is very, very huge save by Magnus. Yeah, this is just incredible. That's what he needed. And okay, but knowing Temur, yeah, he has those kind of openings. We have seen him already using the hippopotamus against Jan in a must-win game and so on. So he's that type of a player who might try to create some chances with some crazy openings.
Absolutely, yeah. But that you do have to mention that I think that was a blitz game, right? The Hippo he played against Jan, and in a blitz game, your task is much clearer. You just have to keep pieces on the board and wait until you both have 30 seconds, and then whoever calculates tactics better when it becomes a mess wins. And he played that game unbelievably well. Not to take anything away from him, but it's much easier in a blitz game than it is in a 15-10, where Magnus, will know that he will have one or two spots in the game where if he needs to calculate something precisely, he can just stop and think for like 5 minutes. It's a very different scenario. It's not impossible, but it's not easy. Let's put it like this. And definitely much harder than in a blitz game.
Yeah, one of those things. Do you think that we're going to be seeing G6, Bishop G7 as quickly as possible from Timur?
I'm not sure, but what is he supposed to play? If he plays a Sicilian, I think Magnus's repertoire to equalize in Sicilian is reasonably well defined. You're getting checked from b5, you're getting Bishop b5, move 3 in most cases. And Magnus has a ton of experience playing those positions, lots of sort of hard knowledge on both how to fight for advantage, because he plays that for a win as well, all of those systems, but he also knows very well sort of where the fallbacks are if you just want to sterilize as much as possible. So yeah, I think you have to play some sort of an irregular opening, some sort of hippo or something. But the issue with that is that you are giving up a lot in terms of objective evaluation. And Magnus is not going to be very upset to be much better by move 10,
Exactly. And one of the things that otherwise, of course, Radjabov is a big expert of Sveshnikov, Kalashnikov, but I mean, in a must-win situation, Sveshnikov is unfortunately not the right opening to choose. And the Kalashnikov would be another option, but it also gives white a lot of stability, and it's certainly not like black really gets serious winning chances out of the opening. And this gives me the feeling that maybe Timur will just say, no, I can't play e4, c5. I can't go e4, e5. If I want to go all in, then maybe I have to start with some g6, bishop g7. But against one e4, it's a little bit a problem. If it would be one d4, then his king's Indian would suit him much more.
Right, so big questions there for Raja. Now in that game too, when Raja had the black pieces, we saw Berlin, and that fizzled out with no chances for either side. So don't know what he's going to play against 1e4, but the one thing we can be sure about is that there's going to be no Berlin at all, as Timur has to win this final game on demand to force a playoff. Now, Peter, in our other semi-final match, Jan versus Wesley, it was a very thrilling match, lots of a couple of decisive games, but even the draws that we had were pretty spectacular draws.
Yeah,
what were your thoughts on that semi-final, and also on this cold-blooded approach that we've been seeing from Wesley throughout the event?
Well, it's working for him, so it's very hard to criticize something that is, practice shows is the correct approach. And there's a lot of people in my life who tell me very, very strictly not to be results orientated, but if it's working, why change it? And yeah, the draws were exciting, but the ones where Jan was white, right, the ones where Wesley was white, we've seen those draws before, even in this tournament. But yeah, I think I visited a Russian stream a couple of days ago, just as they qualified to play each other, and we discussed with Miro the fact that in as much as Jan actually has a bête noire, so to speak, a nemesis in the chess world, Wesley appears to be that. Jan has a very, very poor score against him, and the dynamics are, they've improved somewhat. He's won some games. He's won a classical game, a very important classical game against Wesley in the Jerusalem Grand Prix in 2019. But even after that victory, the score is 5-1 in classical. Wow. And not very many people have a score like this against Jan. And I think Wesley generally just is kind of an awkward opponent for him. And this is a kind of a narrative that, you know, people like, but also you shouldn't oversell, because obviously, you know, there's only so much that, you know, can be explained by somebody having a good score against you. But, you know, once that score progresses past a certain threshold, it starts playing on your mind a little bit. I think we've all had those types of like dynamics with people where, it starts living in your head, and it starts impacting every next game that you play against that person. And I don't know. I think Jan is a lot more emotionally stable now than he ever was in his career. And 2021 Jan Nepomniachtchi probably, you know, cares much less about all of this stuff than he used to. So I don't want to like point to this and say, you know, this is why he lost again, but it probably played some part. He probably doesn't enjoy playing Wesley all that much. Plus, of course, the mosquitoes. Like, don't forget the mosquitoes. It's very important.
That's actually a very fascinating insight right there. And especially we know that Jan Nepomniachtchi is probably the only player in the elite who have a plus score against someone like Magnus, but really struggles, as you're mentioning, with a player like Wesley. And I think it comes down to their playing styles. Jan, we know he gets rash often. Sometimes he is such a gifted tactician, one of the strongest players when it comes to these aggressive positions. But with Wesley, you have to have such a strong foundation for those tactics, because as we were mentioning earlier, that you try to trick and bluff a player like Wesley, it often falls flat. And Peter, this dynamic that you were mentioning of having this one person, this one player who you really struggle against, it also reminded me a lot of the Hikaru Magnus dynamic that we've seen in the past, a very similar storyline.
Yeah, but that doesn't seem to be, you know, as impactful as it used to be anymore, right? Hikaru has been doing very, very well in his head-to-head matches against Magnus in the tour. Hikaru, the one they played here was just sort of mind-blowing in how he just ran Magnus absolutely ragged, and Magnus had to, you know, pull off miracle after miracle just to stay alive in the match until he finally, got a good position with white, converted, and was kind of stable after that. But I mean, winning, going ahead against Magnus 3 times in a space of an 8-game match, if you count it as a 1 8-game match or 2 4-game matches, is extremely impressive. But yeah, they used to definitely have that dynamic, and the absolutely one-sided score they used to have, it definitely
in the classical especially.
Yeah, it definitely. I'm fairly certain it played a part in their future meetings. And as someone who started as by having a very good score against Hikaru myself, I know that once I made a mistake of actually losing a couple of games to him, you just feel the dynamic shift. You feel that the person opposite you at the board no longer really feels like this is a problem. Yeah. And I've sort of bitterly regretted having made that mistake at some point, but it's you can't take it back.
It always amazes me, these psychology, these factors, these nerves that play a role in the game of chess. And I think that's what keeps the sport as well going. And that's what separates human chess from engine chess, from AI chess, and all these different dynamics that exist between players, the nerves that they need to keep under control, and of course the moves that they need to make on the board still need to be absolutely high class. Now the big match coming ahead of us is the game 4 the final rapid game between Magnus Carlsen and Carlsen-Radjabov. We've been discussing the opening that Raja needs to play with the black pieces to try and keep a game alive, to try and keep his chances. A golden opportunity there for Raja in game 3, that rook pawn ending, as both Peters were showing us the chances that existed for white there, but Magnus got that one opportunity to go rook h4 and he didn't miss it. Now, besides the opening, we've seen Raja have good positions in the middle game. What do you think? How should he approach this game 4? What does he need to do? He can't really expect an advantage right out of the opening playing with the black pieces. So what needs to be done in such a situation?
Peter?
I don't know. I mean, I'm certainly not a specialist in this situation because I have a very clear cut repertoire, which is basically based on equalizing first and giving my opponent the chance of trying to prove advantage with the white pieces. And if he does that, then I think like I have very, very good chances of countering it. But here the problem is that Magnus has already pointed out so many times that in such situation, he's also ready to be very pragmatic. So just at the first possible moment, he can shut the game down. And this gives Teemu the feeling like he has to, I mean, he can't play normal game and then look for chances. Yeah, he will need to take risk, which means that he might not end up with a good position. He might end up with a bad position, but he even has to kind of take this into account if he wants to slowly keep the game going and play on Magnus's nerves. But as Peter mentioned, here we are dealing with a game with 15 minutes plus 10 seconds increment. So basically any kind of big experiment might backfire heavily. And so it's a very, very tough call for Teemu, what he should be doing. I'm personally very eager to see how he will deal with this.
All right, just a couple of minutes before liftoff, so let's get to the real stuff. What are our predictions? Peter, one of you, start with this one. Are we going to see a playoff or not? Just yes or no?
No.
No, definitely not at this moment. But of course, we are all hoping for to have as much excitement as possible. But I can't really imagine at this moment.
Yeah, I think if you've put on the spot, it's very, very easy to Magnus with a draw is a heavy favorite here, and you kind of have to tread a very difficult line between not allowing any like well-known theoretical variations where I don't know, a lot of pieces might disappear or something along those lines, and on the other hand, you don't want to be like dead lost out of the opening, just trying to avoid theory. And sometimes these games just become complete blowouts. I've had games like this myself on both sides of it. Like when I won, for instance, the last Russian Super Final I won, I was playing a tiebreak against Nikita Vityugov, and I somehow won game 1 with the black pieces, and game 2 lasted like 13 moves because Nikita just went all out trying to play something non-standard, and it backfired. And obviously, like, I'm not beating Nikita in 13 moves normally, but when you sort of overdo trying to play for a non-standard outcome, you sometimes land in such difficulty that you just can't continue. And yeah, I mean, these games they do, and I've also lost games like this in my career many a time. So you kind of have to keep the game afloat without compromising the quality of your position too much. And yeah, I'm very curious how Teemu will approach it. It's a very difficult task, but when it's done well, it's a state of art thing, and we'll see.
Well, that's a great analysis right there of the action that's coming up. But now Raja did do this yesterday. He did manage to win game 4, but the big difference there was that he was playing with the white pieces. Now he takes on the exact same task, but starts with black. And we're all expecting Magnus to play 1e4, and he goes for it. Raja can't go for the Berlin. No e5. Is it going to be c5? It's going to be b6.
It's b6. Yes. I mean, the Adiban spirit from the black side. Yeah, that's what he needs.
Yeah, the hippo from this side. Yeah, I expect the other bishop to also get fianchettoed later in the game. I don't know why it's important to start from the left, so to speak. But yeah, you're not going to like your position by move 10, but probably there will be 32 pieces on the board by move 15 anyway. So that's the plan. And this is what he's done against against Jan as well, I'm pretty sure. Maybe not this exact move order, but definitely this exact concept.
Yes, exactly. I mean, something like this. Another big question from white side also, that how do you treat this game? Do you play c4? I mean, it's also kind of tempting to go c4 and then get the knight to c3, just controlling everything. I don't know exactly why this move order is so special from black side, but Temur definitely has something in mind, and Magnus just goes a4.
Yeah, a4, because you're asking the question. You can't really allow a5. A5 is extremely awkward if it's allowed. And then after a6, you feel like you've gotten a bit of a concession potentially, and you've gained some space. Yeah, what Peter is indicating there, just switching to a kind of a quiet Spanish type game, just getting the knight over to g3. And knight gf6 is a bit of an indication that maybe the bishop isn't getting fianchettoed, because I think knight gf6 normally is connected with bishop b7 and castles. We'll see. I think like the hippo is definitely, I mean, the knight gets developed to e7, not f6.
Well, I'm going to ask the most critical question at this moment. Now, yesterday we were discussing why the orangutan is called the orangutan. Does anyone have the story of why the hippo is called the hippo?
I'm sure Google knows, but I don't know.
I'm on
exactly. I have the same answer as Peter.
I'm on it.
But definitely, you know, as a kid, again, once you hear that this setup is called the hippopotamus, then you feel like, I want to play it. Yeah, I want to play it.
Yeah, and actually in Russian for some reason, and Peter, I think you will you will find it mildly amusing. It's not called the hippo in Russian. I think in Russian it's, and you will criticize my pronunciation, it's called the uitelki. After, I think, a Hungarian chess player who did a lot of that.
Ah, really? I
Yeah.
don't know. I don't know this. I don't know this. But yesterday I had this conversation with Jan, and I told him, yeah, the orangutan, and he told me that, no, but it's not orangutan. I said, well, in Hungary it's orangutan, but in Russia it's Sokolsky, right, or something?
Yeah, before it's called Sokolsky, yeah. Although it probably is now at least split between Sokolsky and orangutan, because orangutan is such an, you know, evocative name. But yeah, I learned it as a Sokolsky opening for sure, as the one before. Yeah.
Well, Google as confused as the panel here as to why it's called the hippo. No big story as the one with Tata cover involving the Bronx Zoo, as we had with the orangutan. But apparently any structures which involve the pawns not going past the 6th rank, and this sort of a setup that it takes apparently resembles a hippo with those pawns there. And that's the reason behind it.
Most of it is underwater kind of thing. I don't know. Like it's pure guesswork. I have no idea.
That is imaginative. That could work. All right, but let's come back to the actual move.
So if you imagine like the 6th rank as the water line, and you know, most of the animal is, well, it's over water in this like it doesn't work. Nothing works.
No, that makes a lot of sense. But then we could also call it the iceberg.
You know, animal names are cuter and cuddlier. So.
Also, absolutely agree.
Yeah, but this actually also reminds me of Levon was mentioning after his game against Magnus that the pawn structure was like some cheese structure. And I was, you know, looking at this diagram, I couldn't really understand where this cheese is coming from. So probably everyone...
The cheese is coming from Switzerland, Peter.
Yeah, that's true.
That particular cheese is definitely a Swiss cheese. Yeah, so we now have basically a Briar, and probably a very good Briar for white, I would assume, because you're probably quite a bit ahead on Tempe. In black's favor is the fact that there is no pawn on b5, so white doesn't have the usual source of play, because normally you would, like the bishop on d3 would already be attacking something actually, and black would have to either play c6 or defend it in some other fashion. With the pawn on b6, black has plenty of time to continue shuffling, and it's actually white who needs to kind of nominate what he's doing in this position. But it's like, obviously white has no reason to worry about anything yet. It's just a position with 32 pieces on the board.
Yeah, also it's kind of a little bit puzzling that how Black wants to solve his problems in long term, because one thing is clear that, yeah, Black gonna go bishop f8, g6, bishop g7, but usually the barrier is connected with a timely break with d6, d5. However, this timely break with d6, d5 would be perfectly welcomed by Magnus if he just puts his pieces like queen c2, he might put his pawn to b3, gets h3 in, and then invites Black, okay, please equalize with d5, and if you don't go d5, then what else you gonna do? So it's kind of a very, very unpleasant situation.
Yeah, and Magnus goes b4 instead, I think sort of hinting at ideas of like a5, b5, d5, and then c4 maybe. Because I think Magnus is also not the kind of a player who, you know, given a chance, I think he would like to make a draw in this game from a position of strength. I'm sure he takes a draw for at any point in the game, obviously, but he would like not to have to beg for it. He would very much prefer to just at some point acquire a decent bit of advantage and just dictate the matters in that fashion. And yeah, b4 seems to indicate that he is planning something proactive on the queen side. We'll see. We'll see. You can play d5 even here, honestly. There's nothing particularly wrong with just playing d5, and then if c6, you have a choice of either c4 or d takes c6 and then a5 once again.
But of course, after d5, at least the game becomes quite double-edged, yeah? Or
yeah,
at least it's gonna be some big fight, yeah? It's maybe something that also Temur can look forward to. I don't know exactly how, but it feels like at least then there is some kind of a game.
Absolutely, yeah. But also I want to say that if let's put the pawn back on d4 and play some two passes like h3, bishop g7, queen c2. I'm not sure white has such easy equality after d5. I think black might be a little bit better after this, because the bishops honestly are more active on b7 and g7 than they are on d3 and d2, which is why Magnus goes queen c1 for now, kind of indicating that he is not planning to just completely pass. Yeah, put the bishop on h6 and then think about his next ideas.
And does Black want to use this opportunity to be able to go bishop g7, bishop h6, and put that bishop back to h8 so that he can keep it alive to get that d5 in?
Probably, yeah, probably. In particular, because of I think it's very sound, even from a purely chess perspective, but also because of the match situation. You want all the pieces on the board. You don't want simplifications.
But one thing I have to mention that looking at this position and thinking back what we have been discussing, and we are not entirely sure how Temur will treat the game at all, I feel like he kind of got a position. Yeah,
yeah, I think he should be very happy because it's a non-theoretical position. He is not much worse at all, and it's definitely playable. Every single piece is still on the board, so yeah, it's about as perfect an outcome as possible. He is not better, but apart from, you know, some kind of a dream scenario where Magnus blunders something, it's a very, very good outcome of the opening in a must-win game with black, for sure.
Yeah,
so bishop g7 played here, and queen c1, you were mentioning the logical follow-up would be bishop h6. And black's main idea after probably moving the bishop, trying to keep as many pieces on the board, is to go d5. So how is white going to handle that? Will white commit to d5 himself in this position?
I'm not sure. I would like to play h3 just because, you know, the thought of knight g4 being available to black annoys me. But maybe you can play d5 in this position. I don't know.
Yeah, one of the things we have to kind of understand that now if white plays the move h3, can black try to play d5 or not? Yeah, that's one of the things we have to clarify.
And how do you react after e takes d5? Do you just?
I think just d5? Knight takes, yeah.
Knight d5.
Knight takes. Seems fine to me. I don't see any.
And bishop g5 doesn't bother you at
it does, but once again, it's what my position is. I will play queen c8 and just, you know. Yeah, Magnus goes a5. Magnus says time to start something concrete. I have a feeling he's connecting it with d takes e4, because normally the idea here, after b5, you really hate to allow e4, cd4, c5 at some point, because then the position really becomes incredibly sharp. So I'm kind of expecting d takes e5 in this position. But I think Timur takes with two pieces then. You don't even take with the d pawn. Maybe but d5 doesn't really connect very well with queen c1 on the previous move. I'm very curious what Magnus will play here.
Yeah, me too, because somehow I have the feeling like he's mixing things up unless he has a very clear idea. Yeah, that's what we have to find out. Because if he isn't coming up with an impressive follow-up, then I would say like all this plan of going b4 and bishop d2, b4, and then queen c1 and all this is a little bit strange, but I'm pretty sure that he has a clear idea.
So he needs something concrete here. Now you're mentioning this move d5, but I think especially with a5, b5 committed, d5 would only make c6 the break more attractive.
Yeah, exactly. I think the queen on c1 doesn't really gel particularly well with that idea. Because d5, even rook c8 immediately, or c6, dc6, bishop c6, c4, and rook c8 there. It feels like we are kind of playing directly into the X-ray. Although, I mean, c takes b5 here, I don't know, it just becomes unbelievably sharp, but it might be playable for all we know. But it does become... Bishop b4, it might be bad for white. It could be just unplayable, yeah, who knows.
One of the very first game when I saw that white can give up the center like this and take cb5 and give the e4 pawn was, I think, in your game against Almash in 98 in Dortmund, something like this.
Yeah, it was a slightly different structure, but I was very proud of that idea. I had it, that was like one of the cases where my home prep worked sort of exactly as intended. And Zoltan, I think, made one mistake in that game and it was gone. It was a very good feeling. I don't get those games very often where I bring a good opening idea and it just works exactly as you hope it would.
Yeah, I remember that game had a very big impression because, okay, back in the end of the 90s, giving up the center like this without all the modern engines and so on was like a very special moment.
Yeah, and I've won not one but two games in that line. I also won a very nice game against Sasha Grishuk in a I think Retimno Club Cup in a few years later. But yeah, it's since it's not really relevant towards in regards to this position, I probably should stop bragging. But those are nice memories.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, and guys, please check those games out because it's really, if we are talking about Spanish structures, everything, and you want to see something very interesting and not the usual typical ideas, then check those games out. They are really special. So, okay, back to the game. Bishop a6, bishop h8, as Tanya already called it, that black will definitely move back the bishop to h8. And what do we do next?
Yeah, this is the question now. How do you go from here? I still feel g5 gets met immediately by knight e5, rook e5. Black does not want the symmetrical structure there. So, I mean, maybe you can still do it and play something like, I don't know, rook a2, e2 or something, and just try to sort of hold your shape here. But it's not ideal in terms of like your position is not better. You're also not really progressing towards any kind of clear-cut equality. You're just sort of moving the pieces around and hoping that eventually, you know, everything will work out in some way. But yeah, I don't know. I'm very curious how Magnus will approach this. It's really unclear to me.
He approaches it with d5, Peter. He goes with d5. And I'm just wondering if after d takes e5, that other structural exchange, you were so keen to take with the two pieces, because then that really activates that bishop on h8.
Yeah, I think this is why he's playing d5. He's trying to keep the bishop on h8 contained. And yeah, black definitely needs to go for as early a c6 break as possible. I'm just trying to figure out if it's better to start with rook c8 or with c6, and what the difference is.
C4 makes any difference?
Yeah, and I can play c6 and then maybe take with the rook. I don't know if it's any good. Like, that would be the difference. That I have an additional option here of taking with the rook and trying to use the pin even sort of more forcefully. But it's also kind of awkward because the rook doesn't really belong on c6. Obviously, it's not where it should be. And I don't know if we have enough of a threat here, like rook a2, c2, for instance. Maybe white can even play slowly. Just unpin in 2 moves. And if black doesn't do anything in those 2 moves, white will just be much better, actually.
Yeah, it reminds me one of these games between Vachier-Lagrave and Magnus, I think. Was it in Vaikanzi? Somewhere there was some... No, it was in one of these rapids. Some very, very sharp. It was coming from the Breyer, and we have seen exactly very similar structures. So in this regard, yeah, Magnus is maybe orientating himself and trying to combine and compare what was really happening there in that game, because it reminds me of this structure very much.
Yeah, it's very possible. Yeah, and now it will become quite sharp, and there will be great demand for good precise calculation. And in a way, I think Magnus should be quite happy about it, because finally he will have something concrete to work out. He will have concrete goals to aim for. Because until this particular moment, it was a little bit too amorphous. That's a very difficult to understand decision to my eyes. Because now I can just play h3. How are you playing this position for a win if I just play h3 here?
And a complete shift in Magnus there. Complete shift in his body language. What do you think? Why did this move surprise you as well so much, Peter?
Well, because white is... d takes c6 might still be fine. It might still be a good move. But the issue is, like these types of structures with the bishop on b7 completely contained, they really aren't supposed to be, arguably white is maybe even slightly better. And it's also extremely difficult for black to generate any kind of play. So on the other hand, maybe it's a very good psychological ploy, because the game becomes a very long-winded kind of protracted affair. Like h3, black plays rook c8, queen d2, bishop g7 or something, and starts a very, very long process of smoking out the bishop on h6, and then playing rook f8, knight e8, knight g7, bringing the bishop back from b7 to some kind of a normal diagonal where it does something. And both sides will be doing not very much for the next, 20 moves. And for Magnus, who probably wants to kind of simplify and make a draw somewhere and just have to no longer have to think about things, it's maybe a little bit more annoying. Yeah, he does go h3 though. He is a very good player of closed Spanish positions, and he understands he is doing well. It's just that this is now a completely different game to what we expected.
Yeah, but to my eyes, I almost feel like it.
Wow, he goes on blocking the position.
Yeah, I mean, he already has to. Yeah, we're gonna see this. Yeah, bishop c2 retreats, and this one-sided Breyer positions. I perfectly agree with Peter that I just don't see how black can try to play for a win here. Certainly, yeah, black will try to get the bishop to c8, rook to a7, then slowly bishop g7, king h8, knight g8, as Peter already mentioned. These are all the moves that needs to be played, but still the move c5 almost felt to me like a mouse slip, yeah, that you want to play c6, and then suddenly the mouse moved all the way to c5. However, looking at the body language of Temur, it kind of indicates that it was intentional. So
yeah, and also I think probably you don't even trade the bishops. I think you go back to e3 and you start pushing. Like, if white wanted to play this for a win, I think you actually play for a reasonably quick f4, and you're quite happy about things. And yeah, Magnus says, yeah, you can trade, but he is indicating that he is not unhappy with the idea of pushing f4, because what happens if he pushes f4 is that after the pawns get traded, black gets a very nice square for his knights on e5, but white has a fantastic square for his knight on d4. And white gets the semi-open f-file to try and do something. Yeah, something like knight 6d7, and we go knight f3, knight d4. And we get this kind of a setup where with the queen side still somewhat open, this is kind of double-edged, but with the queen side completely closed, black is probably not worse, or at least not much worse perhaps, but I really don't know how you're supposed to open anything without sort of completely destroying your own position. Because the only break that you have available to you is sort of f5, but if you push for f5, you probably just get mated. Yeah, we'll see. We'll see what transpires.
Yeah, here we see that White actually Teemu started with king h8, just making sure that White is not in time to go f4, because then knight g8 might be awkward, kicking the queen immediately. So Magnus comes back to d2, and he probably insists on going f4, and Teemu getting ready of occupying the e5 square. We might be seeing this structure that we have been talking about.
Yeah, because I think if you pass forever with White and if you don't play f4, you eventually might have to allow h5, h4, and then Black starts like creeping into your territory, and it's maybe not very enjoyable. And the temptation just to sort of never do anything ever again in this game might be quite strong for Magnus. But I think it's better to be proactive here. And yeah, he does go f4.
Yeah, I think that temptation would be strong for any other player. But Magnus, I think for him, f4 is just such a natural and a thematic move here. And now even just bring the other rook, go rook a f1, and all these ideas of transferring the knight to d4. I feel that after that c5, c4 decision, it's a completely different position and different game. That bishop on h8 died, the bishop on b7 died. A very, very strange decision by Raja there. And looking at it, I can't see the eval bar anymore, but I think it's White who's in the driving seat at this moment, pushing for advantage.
Yeah, and also I think once this structure change happens, it's much easier for White to kind of figure out what his aims are. You put a knight on d4. You could also just take on e5 and play with a pair of knights instead of 4 knights. It's probably not a huge mistake anyway.
And get the other knight, knight e2, knight
yeah,
d4.
but I think it's not necessary. I kind of expected knight d4, honestly. Maybe he didn't like allowing queen g5. Yeah, because I think for Black as well, it's easier to deal with only having one knight pretending to be on e5. Now we go rook f6.
Rook f7 doesn't work at all, does it? Can we check rook f7 for a moment?
I assumed it didn't, but yeah, it's kind of awkward.
Queen d4 and queen h6.
Whoa, yeah. This might be extremely awkward for Black, right? Because there's no way, because rook e7, queen g5 as well. This is maybe the biggest issue.
Yeah, this is the point. Yeah.
And rook f8 does queen d4.
Yeah, rook e7 was the point. Was I was trying to keep the e5 square available to my rook while also trying to kick your rook away from the 7th. But yeah, queen g5 seems to work. Yeah,
rook e7, queen g5, rook a7.
Yeah, but he doesn't do it. He goes rook f6. I think he just decided that he doesn't need to get involved.
Then queen f6 mate comes.
Wow.
Yeah. So what's happening if bishop f5 here? I guess we can go ef and fg, right? You don't want to allow that.
Rook f7, not sure what was the repetition there.
Maybe there wasn't any. It's very possible it was just very strong. Maybe it was just winning a pawn, honestly. Like Black can probably ignore it.
Maybe king g8, Peter. Maybe rook f7,
takes
king g8.
Yeah, that's a good. He does play bishop f5. No, but that must lose, right? EF and fg must be winning on the spot, right?
Yeah, this feels unbelievably strong, because then we get f5 square for the knight.
Yeah, queen h4, knight f5, and then something bad will happen. I don't know exactly what, but it just it feels like it has to be losing. That's a very strange decision.
It's on the board. Yeah, it's on the board, and yeah, this is just a devastating initiative.
Yeah, I don't think this was right. I think you had to, having committed to playing a long game, you had to continue playing a long game there. Just kind of shuffle around, wait for some kind of an opportunity. Because here you just get mated. Yeah, I don't see, if you go back to d8, gf, and queen h6 wins on the spot, it just ends the game. So you kind of have to go to h4, but then knight f5, queen h5. And I think the simplest is just to play knight takes d6, but I'm sure there are even more convincing ways of winning this position. There might be some mate, but if all else fails, we can do this. And yeah, we're never risking anything at all.
So what is the live position? We've got queen h4 and Magnus thinking he goes knight f5 directly, attacking the queen, going for g7 next.
Yeah, G7 96 maybe is even cleaner, yeah. Or G7, maybe I'm missing something very forcing, like G7 and then maybe Rook F4, H4 or something. But yeah, he just goes after the
He
D6
just goes
pawn.
for the pawn.
Yeah. So he's not really behind on material. He has 2 pawns for the exchange, and also there will be a continued attack for the rest of the game. And the G pawn will be on D6 in a couple of moves' time. Yeah,
So what-
that seems definitely good enough for his purposes.
Yeah, knight f5. Now also he gets d6, then queen d5. I mean, whatever. I mean, it's just a completely winning position. We also see the engine bar going completely viral, like it's game over basically.
Yeah, so we get. I think it will be the 3rd Carlsen-So final of the tour,
correct.
right?
It was at the Skilling Open and then the Opera Euro Rapid, and both times Wesley won. He beat Magnus and won the tournament in the finals.
Yeah, but last time for the 3rd place, then Magnus beat Wesley, yeah, on the Magnus Carlsen Invitational. So actually, already Magnus got the taste of beating Wesley. So definitely very interesting.
Yeah.
Final.
But you have to say that they are, the 2 absolutely dominant players of the tour so far. Regardless of how the finals come out, to have the same final for the 3rd time in 5 events, or is it? I think it's 5 events, right? 6 events, yeah, okay. Yeah, Rook A7, but yeah, you kind of know how this movie ends. Yeah, Bishop B4, Bishop D5 is extremely, extremely painful. Probably the way to continue here, just to include the final piece in the attack, and then
That's a nice idea. That's a really nice idea. To bring
there
the
might
bishop
be,
into the
yeah, he might not play it if there is a forced win already, which is kind of a pity because I think Bishop B4 is stylistically the nicest move he had.
Queen D5, not as powerful as the Bishop D5 check that would have been.
Trapping the queen with Bishop D1.
Oh no, okay, I'm withdrawing my complaints. He actually traps the queen here. Queen G5, H4, and it has no squares.
Oh my god, Queen G6 does Knight E7 forking the queen.
I am withdrawing my objections. This is very, very cute.
Unbelievable.
I mean, there is the C1 square if you want to, but white can play Bishop H5 there and start collecting everything. So yeah.
Queen G5, and that's it. That's it. Raja resigns. And with that, we see a relieved Magnus. Definitely a better day than yesterday for the world champion. And he wins the semifinals with 3-1. Never really giving a chance in this game after Black committed C5. It looked like it was the opening outcome that Raja could have best hoped for. But that questionable plan with C5, C4, and Magnus taking it away. In a very crushing style after that. And with that, we have set ourselves up for a final between Magnus Carlsen and Wesley So. Now, these two have played 2 finals, as we were discussing earlier, in the Meltwater Champions chess tour. Those 2 finals were won by Wesley. One fight for the 3rd place between Magnus and Wesley. Another matchup where Magnus won that match. So it's going to be an absolutely amazing ride there, Peter. Both Peters, actually. Your thoughts on this upcoming final?
I'm just going to be very excited to watch it. I've been watching all of it. I mean, I played in some of it, but I've also been watching the knockouts every day. It's the whole series is very, very exciting to watch it. And there were definitely some highlights for me. I think the Nepomniachtchi Caruana match was fantastic, and there was a lot of other stuff which I really enjoyed. And yeah, these 2 are, it quickly is becoming the rivalry of the online age. So yeah, definitely looking forward to watching that tomorrow and day after that.
And Peter, if you had to point out one strength in Wesley's play so far, I mean, he's had this incredible run throughout the event. What do you think it comes down to, that one quality of Wesley, and what has impressed you the most about Magnus, despite being shaky, finding himself in the finals?
I think Wesley, we kind of know what he is.
Peter, we will come back. We will come back. We've got Magnus with us in Oslo.
Cannot say that I had a very aggressive mindset, but I decided at least I wanted to play something less theoretical and try and get a game. But I mean, realistically, I think I messed something up and I was just quite a bit worse. But fortunately, I managed to solve my problems. He probably didn't choose the right way, and after that, I already felt like I had some psychological initiative. So I tried to find a way to play for a win, and yeah, finally he blundered, which was very, very satisfying because it was easy at some point in that game to be satisfied with the fact that I solved my problems and that I could make a draw, but I was always trying to keep some life, and it really paid off.
And Magnus, ending on a loss yesterday, how difficult was it to recover from that? Do you think game one today was the turning point in the match overall?
Oh yeah, for sure. Obviously, it wasn't ideal what happened in the last game yesterday, but I knew that it's sort of easier, I feel, to adjust this time than it was in the preliminaries, because this time it's still sort of more in my own hands, that I just have one opponent to beat once. So it was obviously very upsetting, but nevertheless, I think I dealt with it fine, and I definitely had a decent mindset coming into today.
And well, it's been a tense tournament so far, with the preliminaries, that final day, the quarterfinal against Hikaru, and now against Team Radjabov decided today. How are you feeling about the way you're playing, Magnus?
No, as you said, yeah, it's been awfully tense. Can't say that my play is like flowing great, but I mean, I'm in the finals, and that's the most important thing. So you can always improve as you get there, but as I've said before as well, I think I need to play better to beat Wesley than I have so far. But the way the tournament has been going, like even being in the final, is obviously a massive achievement for me.
Yeah. And now, as you mentioned, Wesley So in the third final for you so far in the tour. What will you do differently to beat him this time?
Well, I did beat him in the 1/3 place match we played. I don't really know, to be honest. He's not an easy person to beat. I think he was pretty vulnerable yesterday in his match, but today seemed a lot more convincing. So he's very strong.
Yeah, it's going to be an interesting final, Magnus. What will you do warming up for that final today and tomorrow?
Well, I'll probably watch the other big final that's going to be on today, and then try and be fresh and prepare.
Yeah. Do you have a favorite? Someone you will root for in the final in the Champions League tonight?
No, not particularly.
All right. We wish you a great evening, Magnus. Enjoy yourself, and congratulations again.
Thank you.
Magnus Carlsen, of course, is going to watch the Champions League final in football, getting ready for the big final for himself in the Champions Chess Tour tomorrow. And he seems ready.
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better. Live better.
So fresh, so new.
Freedom!
It's all for you.
All for you. Freedom!
Keep your ears to the ground.
Talking about the freedom!
It's the best show in town.
Let's show you that freedom!
That's exactly the thing about Magnus Carlsen, that despite not being in form, and we keep discussing his performance in the preliminaries, what happened in the knockout stages, and with the Hikaru match, losing first, having to come back, but despite all of that, even not being in his best shape, he finds himself in the finals, making it at the top, and now faces Wesley So. Peter, what were the key moments for you in today's semi-final matchups?
Well, Wesley just took it in his usual fashion. He basically says, "I'm confident in my game enough to basically only play the black games." And he was in trouble in the first one, but in the second one, I think Jan felt like he had to treat it like a must-win, and Wesley converted after Jan overpressed. And as for Magnus, Magnus played well today, and the one game where he felt a little bit shaky, there may have been some weird opening mishap in game 3, but then he defended very, very tenaciously, and the moment he was provided with a chance to escape, he obviously grabbed it with both hands. And yeah, the thing that you were talking about just now, the fact that he's in yet another final, despite, I mean, I'm pretty sure most people would recognize that this is very, very far from his optimal shape, is, you know, testament to how consistent he is and how well, you know, his autopilot, how well it is tuned, even when he's definitely not in any kind of particularly good state. But he will need to up his game for the finals, though. I think he himself knows that.
Well, I think that now, especially winning this today's set and the match quite convincingly, it will give him very good mood, and it will give him a lot of confidence. And especially when you are struggling throughout the event, yeah, then finally when you are anyway reaching the final and you feel like with every day your game gets better and better, and we might be seeing Magnus suddenly in the final in the best shape, then one could say perfect timing.
That is also very true, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in this regard, yeah, because we are analyzing all these games, and we see so many times in all these tours that, I mean, what happened before or 2 days ago doesn't mean anything. Yeah, once these players get the flow, and Magnus, we know exactly. And I do remember that when Magnus beat Wesley for the 3rd place, it was the Magnus who just played and enjoyed chess. Yeah, it wasn't really about, you know, trying to find the best moves. He wanted to get adventures and everything, and went on to win quite smoothly. In this regard, I feel like this is going to be a very, very interesting match, because clearly, I mean, Wesley wants to keep on this incredible tradition of beating Magnus in the finals, because as Peter mentioned, as with your opponents so many times, that there are these dynamics, yeah, that suddenly you feel comfortable with, you know, that you are capable of beating the guy, and that gives you the confidence. And when you lose it, then suddenly it's so difficult to get it back. Yeah, it's a lot of prestige. I mean, this final going to be fantastic.
Yeah, I'm very much looking forward to it. I've already mentioned that, I believe, but it's because it's true.
100% agree with that. And I think a very important point made there, that Magnus just at every stage of the event seems to be getting more and more in shape. Meanwhile, Wesley has been in top form from the very start. So as you mentioned earlier, clearly the epic rivalry continues. And these two players have shown throughout the Champions Chess Tour that they are the ones who've been most consistent, who've really played their A game throughout the tournaments, and they face each other. And let's not forget, a lot at stake. This is the last major of the Meltwater Champions Chess Tour, and despite Wesley winning 2 events already, Magnus winning the New in Chess Classic, they have not yet, neither of them have confirmed their spot in the finals in September. The winner tomorrow gets a direct spot into the finals in September. Not just that, of course, the big prize fund of $60,000 for the winner, as well as all those Bitcoins. Now, we've got an epic final coming on for you. It will be the same format, played over 2 sets, and if it's a tie after 2 sets, we will go into the playoffs. Set 1 starts tomorrow. This is the FTX Crypto Cup. We've set ourselves up for a dream final. A big shout out to our audience who's joined us on all different platforms. Thank you for sticking out with us. Do consider going premium and supporting the Champions Chess Tour. Thank you so much, Peter, for your amazing insights today. We'll be back with all the action tomorrow.
Air quality isn't the first thing that comes to mind when you think about chess and esports, but it affects our focus, decision-making, health, sleep, and more. What's in the air you breathe? Find out with Air Things. Breathe better. Live better.
Freedom!
So fresh, so new.
Freedom!
It's all for you.
All for you. Freedom!
Keep your ear to the ground.
Talking about the freedom!
It's the best show in town.
Let's show you that freedom! Well, well.